Truth Seeker and or its affiliates are not responsible for any strange phenomena that may occur during or after listening to this podcast, which may include the following: heightened senses of awareness, psychic abilities, UFO sightings, alien contact, time loss, out-of-body experiences, ringing in the ears, ESP, lucid dreaming, increased synchronicities, astral projection, telepathy, stronger intuition, levitation, miraculous healings, and or remote viewing. Please be advised to listen at your own discretion.
Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? To a place of walk on troubled seas, faith to stand when I don't believe. I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come?
You are now locked into the Truth Seeker podcast.
Gargoyles, psychics, everything's ungodly. Dark savage.
Streaming live at truthseeker.com.
She's not a Christian.
Give it up, y'all.
Your portal to the paranormal, esoteric, and all things spiritual.
She's tampering in dark savage stuff.
And now, your host, Truth Seeker.
Yo, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm your host, Truth Seeker. This is the Truth Seeker podcast. Excited, delighted to be with you guys again today, sharing this beautiful, sacred space with you all. And got a good show planned for you all. We're going to get into some good understanding about spirituality and plant medicines and entrepreneurship and mixing all that stuff together. So we're going to be getting into that here within the next few minutes. Can't go any further without saying a huge thank you to everyone supporting my work via Patreon. We are a listener-supported show, and this show doesn't exist without your help. So thank you guys again from the bottom of my heart. Everybody supporting, and some of the newest patrons within the last week or so. I'm going to give a personal shout-out to, let's see, Moses Gallivan. Thank you for coming on. Kevin Maxwell, shout-out to you. And let's see here. Shout out to Renitha. Thank you guys for believing in the work, partnering with me, and coming on to bring this stuff to the table. If you would like to support, head on over to patreon.com/truthseeker. There you get access to my entire discography of music, behind the scenes stuff, extra podcast, some really cool stuff that I'm putting out recently. I just put out 2 meditations actually yesterday. They're available as well. So I got a bunch of those over there as well. So if you believe in the work and you want to partner with me and get access to a bunch of cool stuff, head on over there and check that out. And we're also reworking some of the tiers to kind of give, you know what I'm saying, bring you guys some more stuff that some private courses that we're doing. You get access to the Thursday night School of the Mystics as well. And I'm also going to be opening up a Monday morning session that we're going to be doing for a group session. So if you guys are looking forward to starting your Monday mornings off right and you want to get with the group and do that, find your tribe and vibe with us, send me a message and I'll send you all the info on that. So patreon.com/truthseeker. And thank you guys for the support. Again, go ahead and bring in our guest today. My guest is Levi Darger. Is that how you say it? Darger. I added a G in there. I always mess up those names, bro. Hey, man, welcome to the podcast, brother. We got a lot to talk about today. How are you?
I'm awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be on here and share and connect with you and your audience. So thank you.
Definitely, man. So I guess a good place to start would be just kind of, telling the audience a little bit about yourself and what you bring to the table, man.
For sure. Yeah. So I have a program called Entheopreneur, and we work with high-level, high-performing entrepreneurs. And the premise of Entheopreneur is really simple. We connect entrepreneurs more deeply to themselves, to their life's work, and to each other. It's really just about bringing us back to what matters. I think there's so much about business and entrepreneurship that has become flashy and, ego, and it's all about me, or it's all about success, and it's all about how I look and how I appear. And a lot of people that have climbed their way to the top have done so because they've been driven by really deep inner pain, right? And they get to the top and they find out that the fulfillment that they were seeking isn't there, right? And that is sort of the catalyst for an inward search for a lot of people, and that's where I come in. And we use what we like to do is combine. So we do like adventures and expeditions and things like that. A lot of times we'll go into the wilderness, do badass meetups and trips and neat places around the world. And then we'll also incorporate plant medicine. So psilocybin, ayahuasca, sometimes we'll facilitate even MDMA and things like that. Always in a really responsible, respectful, and appropriate sort of a format.
That's interesting, man, because you're talking about how people have climbed the ladder of success, and especially when it comes to corporate America or capitalism, it can be tricky. You got to step on a lot of people's, backs. You gotta work. You gotta produce. You gotta, there's some tricky things that people have done to kind of weasel their way to the top to be successful. To sell their product or whatever it is. So I'm wondering. Getting all these people out there, some of these people, maybe if they're new to plant medicines and new to this kind of thing, if you get them out in the wilderness and then they have that, one-on-one with God, after having all of this stuff, like, what am I doing with my life? Do people abandon, their callings or what they've been doing, or they kind of get a new, approach on it, or have like a come to Jesus meeting out there? How does that work, man? Because that's a lot to deal with people who are already successful. I'm kind of I'm on the other end. We do similar things, but it's people who are trying to find their calling, trying to find their passion.
Yeah. Sometimes you get people who they come out of that. They come out of a week-long session in Colombia working with ayahuasca, and they come out of it going, "Holy shit, my whole life has been a lie," and this. I get to make a 180 shift in this direction. Or, more often than not, people are coming out with a lot of clarity around how they can actually take what they've created and start aiming that towards something that creates, more meaningful contribution. Because I think, when you really look at it, I mean, my experience and my story about the universe is that even when we're in our deepest ignorance, if you will, even when we're operating from blindness and pain and whatever else we may be operating from, the higher self is always driving that ship, right? And I think there's a reason or a purpose why we go into the things that we do. And we usually come out of, especially when you come out of plant medicine experiences, you come out of that with a lot of clarity, and you see the value in everything that you did, even if it was fucked up, or even if it was, created pain for you or for others, or, you had to step on the backs of the suffering to get there. You come out of it with perspective. And I think that that's incredibly valuable.
How would you market something like that? Like, how do you get people to sign up for the case? Because you're going out to the wilderness. I mean, even that in itself is just super powerful. Just returning to nature, essentially. But how do you market the plant medicines side of it? Because a lot of it's illegal, right? And there's people who kind of know. Do you message them? How does that work if somebody who wants to do a retreat or whatever with you? Like, how do you let them know that this is what we're doing? With it being illegal.
Yeah. Well, first of all, as far as anybody's concerned, everything we do is actually above board. So we, when we organize an ayahuasca retreat, we'll go to Colombia or Costa Rica or places like that where that's legal. Okay. We're probably going to be doing a psilocybin retreat in Holland where there's legal loopholes where you can actually work with psilocybin truffles and things like that. And then, you know, a lot of it is, because a lot of what I do is also in addition to these events, like I'll support people in cultivating their own relationship with plant medicine. Right. So there's a lot of coaching and consulting people who are actually, maybe they're microdosing, because that's one of the things we're doing, kind of helping people deal with things like depression and anxiety. Sometimes they're coming out of, you know, so we'll do microdosing. And as far as marketing, it's actually, there's a lot of word of mouth, you know, people coming out of it going, wow, this totally changed my life. A lot of these people don't want anybody to know that they're working with something as controversial as plant medicines. But there are some, you know, some of the guys that I've worked with, like Ryan Stewman, really great guy. Really, when he came to us, like he was the whole idea of being out in nature and plant medicine, all of that stuff was just like, this is nuts. You know, he's like, this is stupid. I'm not a nature guy. Like, I don't know what I'm doing here, kind of a thing. Coming out of that completely just changed his perspective. You know, I remember him coming out of his experience talking about, you know, having seen what a synthetic, I think that was the word he used, what a synthetic world we live in. Like, and he was talking about how everything he was seeing, the plants were showing him how removed he was from nature, from his own nature, and from everything else, you know. And so a lot of guys are coming out of it with experiences like that. And some of them, like Ryan, like I said, are really awesome about sharing openly and publicly. Like Ryan's the type of guy, he don't give a fuck what anybody thinks. Right? So he just talks about what matters for him, and that helps a lot. Yeah. But I think at the end of the day, it's really just about delivering an immense amount of value and then letting that speak for itself.
Mm-hmm. What was your first experience with psychedelics or plant medicines that kind of let you know, like, hey, this is something I should embrace? Did you find your own healing, you know, using them in the beginning?
Yes, absolutely. I did. You know, I had a very long and painful history. So I came out of as I was sharing with you before we started the show, I came out of a fundamentalist Mormon religious polygamous community, and was raised with what I now look back and I see there's a lot of emotional abuse, a lot of spiritual abuse, a lot of dynamics there. Despite the fact that, you know, in a lot of ways I had a loving family, but there's still a lot of pain and a lot of trauma that came out of that. And so for many years of my life, that pain was haunting me and created a lot of problems and pain and in my marriage and my relationships all over the place. And long story short, it was several years ago, I had kind of hit rock bottom, you know, separated from my wife. She had taken my son and moved back to Germany, which is where she's from. And this was about 8 years ago. And rock bottom, didn't know where else to go. I really just tried to drown my pain through alcohol, through affairs, through, you know, anything that I could to numb that pain. And ended up through happenstance, at a meditation retreat. And I met a gentleman there coming out of the retreat from Colombia. And he was he told me about ayahuasca. And up to that point, I think I'd tried smoking pot like twice and it didn't agree with me. So I'd never done anything with anything. And so he told me about ayahuasca. And the moment he told me about it, there was this, like, my whole spirit just went like this. Like, I don't even know what ayahuasca is yet. He hasn't finished explaining it to me, but my spirit knows. And I need to go. And it took me about 3 years because I had a lot of fears and a lot of excuses and a lot of stories and a lot of things in between. Took me 3 years to actually get down to Peru. And when I went down, it was deep jungle. It was like flying into Iquitos, and then you take like 2-hour bus ride out to the river, and then a 2-hour boat ride down the river, and you're in the middle of the jungle. And I spent 3 weeks down there doing ayahuasca ceremonies. And it was, there's no words for it. It was just absolutely indescribable healing, transformation, release, catharsis, being shown dynamics of my life and the way I had created things and stories that I'd been living through, and the meanings that I had put on experiences as a child, a lot of pain around my father. And these things were just coming up and coming out. And then there was also a lot of emotional catharsis, like just grief, just beyond description, you know, what I would call my own personal Gethsemane, if you will. And having all of these things come out. And that was the beginning for me of a really incredible journey into learning how to work with plant medicines, and eventually answering a call that I felt to facilitate for others.
That was kind of the birthing process of it, of trying to like just kind of going within to get that vision, almost like actually going in to get the healing, and then bringing the healing back out to people as well to get that vision, right?
Yeah, I mean, that it started out just from my own personal healing, actually, for quite a while. It was just, you know, and that trip to Peru, that was the beginning of it. And you know, it's funny. I used to think that that was my red pill moment, you know, like going down and taking the ayahuasca is your red pill moment. And if you're familiar with the Matrix, I'm sure a lot of us are, and the symbology of that and the hero's journey that it represents, right?
Yeah.
What I've come to realize is that was not actually my red pill moment. That was my phone call in the office moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the hero gets the call to action, and there's a call to go cross that threshold. There's a call that's calling you towards your red pill moment. That red pill moment is a moment that you commit irrevocably to your path of transformation, right? And the phone call in the office moment, like that's the call to action. But Neo in that scene right there, you know, that he's got his higher self, which is Morpheus, right? It's on the phone and guiding him through the office and gets him to the window. And all he has to do is jump, and he's scot-free, like he's good to go, right? But he's scared. He's like, I don't know who's on the phone with me. I don't know. This is scary. I don't even know if these guys that he says chasing me are all that bad. You know what? You know, I'll just stay here. And that's the refusal of the call. And I think we all refused the call initially. And I know I did. And so coming back out of that, you have this, and basically the point that I'm making with that is that the plant medicine, I think this is a really important point to make, and I make this with everybody that I work with. Plant medicine does not change your life. You change your life, right? You get a glimpse into possibilities. You get shown things. You are brought to understand things a little more clearly. And then you have the choice to go back into your life and take action to transform or not, right? And that's, I think, a critical point to make, because a lot of people see plant medicines as like a shortcut to enlightenment or a shortcut to whatever they're trying to get to. And it's, I think, the furthest thing from it when you work with it properly.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a good word you bring up, shortcut. And doing my research, I was kind of hesitant as well to try the plant medicines, as far as like psilocybin was my big come to Jesus thing, and I was hesitant. I was listening to a lot of interviews, Aubrey Marcus, Amber Lyon, Reset.me, you know, all that kind of stuff, and then it was piquing my interest. But I would hear other people such as David Wilcock and others talk about how like the psychedelics are a shortcut, and you need to do the spiritual work. You need to, like, even those heightened states of consciousness that you can achieve similar states, not the same thing by any means. We'd like to say that they are, but like through Kundalini yoga or Kabbalistic meditation or holotropic breathing and breath work, you can enter heightened states of consciousness and experience similar realms. They're not, I don't think they're the same, but I would kind of pride myself on the fact that we didn't need, you know, the plant medicine, or we didn't need a shortcut that just bursts open your pineal gland and shoot you into outer space. That you can gently kind of go into those realms by doing the work. So that's really interesting that you bring up the word shortcut, because I had that misconception there from hearing people talk about it who probably didn't really know what they were talking about, right? To say that you can experience the same states. I don't think they're the same at all, you know, because each plant teacher has something different to show you in a different realm that they operate in, and you get access to as well. So you have to deal with, you know what I'm saying, the BS. You have to deal with the stuff that you've been suppressing or act like didn't happen, or maybe you created a different scenario in your mind to a way to cope with pain and traumas, or even things that you've done to people. But when you go into those realms, you have to deal with that stuff, right?
Absolutely, you do. And I think there's a couple of really good points that you made that are worth expanding on. And one of them is the term that you use when you talk about these plant teachers, and how each one of them has, you know, something different to show you. And I think that's a good place to start with this conversation, because first of all, looking at plant medicines and sort of like the purpose or the value or the way, you know, like what value do they serve if they're not shortcuts, or if they are shortcuts, or whatever. And this is my paradigm. This is what I've found the most value in relating to it this way. I'm not going to say that this is the right way or the wrong way. I think everybody gets to sort of choose their way of relating to this, but I find a tremendous amount of value in this perspective. And that is to, first of all, recognize that what we're talking about is not a substance so much as it is a relationship with an actual intelligence. Mm-hmm. You know, and a lot of people go, oh, that's kind of woo, 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 woo. But, you know, I experience, especially since working with plant medicine, I experience a universe that is inherently intelligent, that is alive. And I think it's not a stretch of the imagination by any means to understand that you're dealing with an actual intelligence that is self-aware, sentient, aware of you, and loving, very loving. And so, and a lot of people describe experiences with these different medicines. For example, a lot of people will call ayahuasca the grandmother, you know, and I experience it very much that way. It's like, you know, like a grandmother, like almost like an indigenous kind of grandmother, right? Like the kind who's very loving and very kind, but she ain't going to take no shit, and you're going to respect the elders, right? And she also has an agenda for you. Like she's got something specific that she's going to deliver for you. And so the way the ayahuasca tends to work, for example, is kind of like, come here, you know, come here, sweetheart, come here, come to grandma, and then, you know, squeeze all your pus and your garbage out, and then calm you down. And it tends to come in waves like that, like really intense and then really blissful, and really intense and really blissful. Mm-hmm. You have San Pedro, Huachuma, which is more of a masculine energy. I find they call it Tio, uncle. And then you have psilocybin, which is Los Niños Santos, the sacred children, very playful. I experience it that way. Mm-hmm. And very, almost like psilocybin tends to be like, hey, where do you want to go? Right? Oh, you just want to pop me at a rave and have fun and not go anywhere deep? Okay, fine, cool, whatever. You know, it's your game.
If you want to go deep, it's there, right?
But if you want to go deep, let's go. Like, I'll go where you want to go.
Yeah.
But to understand, first of all, that these are intelligences, and to relate to them that way. Yeah. And to, second of all, to the way that I look at it and the way I approach working with medicine is very much to me like when you step into a ceremony or a journey, if you will. It's like stepping into the classroom of God. That's how I look at it, right? Mm-hmm. And your higher self, your guides or angels, the plant medicines, however you want to look at whatever that is, there is a higher intelligence that is operating and working with you, and that is the professor.
The school
in the class.
God? God being the school, and the classrooms and teachers being the different entities or plant teachers as well. Like God being just the entire school, and each teacher that works under him or her or whatever, Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, that to me, that's kind of what these are, is like different professors in a sort of a university. And the course that you're taking, the fundamental course that you're taking is Who Am I 101, right? And so sometimes you're being introduced to all the things that you thought you were that you're not, mm-hmm. and getting those peeled back and getting mm-hmm. a glimpse into a deeper version of yourself. Sometimes you're being introduced to your potential, and the way I experience it, and I think a healthy way to work with plant medicine is to, first of all, to understand that the way that the medicine works is it meets you wherever you are in the staircase of consciousness. Like we're all just walking each other home. So it's going to meet you wherever you are. It's going to take you a few steps higher, and it's going to give you a glimpse into what life is like at this place in consciousness. And then it's going to drop you back down to where you were. And it's almost like, okay, now you know what you're aiming for. Start climbing those stairs, go back into your life and do the work. So you went into the classroom, you got an education, you got a lesson, you got homework, right? And it's up to you to go do the homework. Now, if you come out of that and you don't do the homework and you go back into class again, the professor's going to be like, "Did you do your homework?" No, the dog ate it, right? All right, here's the same lesson, maybe a little harder.
Yeah.
And you're just going to keep getting those first couple stairs, and you never get to actually see what's possible. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of people that do that. They take ayahuasca almost on a weekly basis, and then they do this bliss chasing, and you're cheating yourself out of the true potential of these medicines, which is to act as a guide and a teacher, because I think that they are meant to lead you to a place where ultimately you don't need them.
Yeah. That's good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. We went I hosted my own men's retreat, and we did this, a similar thing with, psilocybin, and, it was like, okay, it's going to be a come to Jesus moment. Okay. We search our hearts and see what we need to let go of, see what we need to embrace and walk moving forward. I had friends that were suffering with opiate addiction and things like that. So we went into it as like, just a men's retreat, and very solemn, and did some chanting and, fasting and stuff like that. And it was a beautiful encounter. It changed my life, and I'm the one leading it, and it changed my life. I got what I was looking for out of it, right? It meets you where you are. But there was one friend who came, and, he came later than everybody else. He wasn't in on the chanting. He wasn't in on the preparation, on the fasting and vegetarian stuff that we did for a week or whatever. And his experience was a lot different. He was just wanting to hang out and listen to Pink Floyd and this kind of stuff, which is cool if that's what you want to do, right? But it was a little bit something deeper. And I've experienced realms unimaginable, right? And then, the golden teachers is what I did. And I felt like I met these entities that I call the golden teachers, that were like giving me that life review and telling me what to do and asking me questions and stuff. And it was profound, changed my life. But this other guy, after we were done, it was hard to speak. I'm like, what the hell happened? What did we, and it was a roller coaster. We're all experiencing the waves synced together. But this other guy who came separately, he was like, I'm ready to do it again. I'm ready to do it next weekend. And I'm like, next weekend? Like, it's going to take me 3 months, 4 months, or some time to unpack all of this stuff. We must not have had the same experience. And mine was deep too. Mine was like, there's no way. There's no way for you to want to just dive back in. And I think it's irresponsible, just to keep using it as a party drug. And just to say that person did it the following weekend, had a bad encounter. It was very bad, very bad. Wasn't fun. He was with friends who was listening to Marilyn Manson with the doors open at their home with blaring the music. So there's the fear that the cops are coming. He sat in the bathroom having this crazy encounter. So you definitely have to respect it. You have to approach it with a level of respect. One thing I was wanting to kind of piggyback off of as well, when you're talking about the school and you have to do the homework, and I think all this stuff kind of ties in, looking at the research out there about how it helps you deal with depression. Those of you who are dealing with depression, there's so many celebrities, Amber Lyon, myself, you deal with this depression and it can help you. It gives you another perspective on life, what really matters. The neurochemistry, what is it? Neurogenesis as well, regrowing brain cells, all of this crazy stuff. It's beautiful, but there's this notion that I'm exploring, and I'm sure you can speak to it because you kind of just did, in a case that I think that it can cause depression as well. If you don't do the work, if you go and you touch heaven and you communicate with divine beings who tell you your life story and what you need to do, and you go back to your mundane 9 to 5 and you don't put your hand to the plow, you look back and you're just stuck at that 9 to 5 when you know that these greater realms exist and you know that you were meant for something greater, and you're stuck at that job and you don't do the work and you don't make the phone calls. If you don't, bring that stuff out, it will send you into depression because you feel stuck. Have you experienced that, or do you know where I'm coming from with that?
Yeah. It's a really, really beautiful point that you make there, and I think it is an important conversation to have because, first of all, just to take a couple steps back to what you were saying right before that about your friend and his bad trip, and then we'll segue into the conversation about depression. Is if you again are looking at these things as relationships rather than substances, think of it like I don't know if you're married, but I am, and if I look at my wife or any woman as a resource, as a tool, right? Look at how that cheapens the quality of that relationship just by relating to her that way. Oh, she can bear me many children. She washes my dishes and cleans my underwear, and these types of things. Or she's something to get my jollies off on. She's something to use for my own recreational purposes. You can have that kind of intimacy. You can have that kind of sex, but it's shallow, unfulfilling sex, right? And it's the same thing as with any relationship. You can have that, whether it's plant medicines, whether it's the earth, whether it's your business, your money, whether it's God, whatever the relationship is, you can choose to engage with it based on a utilitarian thing, right? This is how we look at pretty much everything. You go to any national forest in America, and it's welcome to Dixie National Forest, land of many uses, right? This is how we look at shit. That's what we get out of it. That's just the way we relate with everything in our culture, rather than looking at things as a relationship for the sake of the relationship itself and valuing what can be had with that. So segueing back into the conversation around depression, absolutely, all the things you touched on with neurochemistry, microdosing is a really great way, especially if there's anybody who's never worked at all with psychedelics and you're dealing with depression or anxiety or things like that. Microdosing is a great way to ease into that. You can, you're not going to be tripping hard. You're taking small incremental doses over a period of time. But the backlash, the double-edged sword of psychedelics is exactly what you've talked about, right? That you go in, you have this profound experience, you touch the face of God, and then you don't integrate that into your being, and you don't allow that to permeate the way that you relate with life and the universe. Then what you get is a disillusioned old hippie, right? What you get is somebody who just goes, oh yeah, it just produces this sensation of, sacredness and the sensation of whatever, but it's just a substance that I tripped on. And so I think depression, there's a lot of different causes of depression, but I think at its core, depression is a symptom of disconnection, right? Mm-hmm. And I say this having dealt with depression quite a bit, actually, and even having depression come back as a resurge in my life after having eliminated it for years through plant medicines. And then just this last year, actually, beginning of 2018, like I had depression just emerge in my life like I hadn't had in a long time. So I think that depression can actually come from a couple of different directions. It can come from not integrating those things. It can also come from having a deep disintegration, like a destabilizing.
Yeah.
Because this is what plant medicines do is they sort of deconstruct your sense of self. Mm-hmm. And most of the time it's at a level that, it sort of shakes you up, but you can put yourself back together in a new way. It helps
you put it, back together.
Yeah, but I've had experiences. About 3 years ago, I was in Colombia and doing ayahuasca, and I had this like it took me apart in the most merciless way, like just absolute tore me apart. I had no memory of who I was. I had no memory of, like, I was trying to remember my kids' names. I was trying really hard to hold on to my sense of self. Like, I was terrified. Mm. In retrospect, I could see that the ayahuasca was trying to give me a gift, but I was so scared. My amygdala was kicking in so hard. I was trying to hold on. And in that experience, I had this just encounter with what I'll call the void. And there's really no words to describe that, but just the emptiness and meaninglessness of the entire universe, and an experience with the aspect of my own non-existence. Mm-hmm. Right? Just, you exist, but you don't exist. You are, but you're not. And that encounter shook me up. Left me in a state of, I don't know if it was depression so much as just fear. Well, it was a lack of, like, the sense of purpose that had come from my previous identity was completely shredded. Mm-hmm. I had no real sense of purpose, and it was almost like
even with your purpose, like showing you the greater scheme, like, I'm going to make change, I'm going to help people. Then you're like, it doesn't matter, the void.
Yeah. And that is a tremendous gift. I have so much appreciation for it in retrospect, but at the time it was really rough. And I don't think that, like, my experience is those types of really intense deconstructions don't come initially for most people. They don't happen out of the gate. Usually the plants sort of reserve those for after you've been doing this for a while, and they're like, okay, let me really disassemble you.
I've been having these weird flashes of my own mortality, and this weird fear will grip me. even after touching eternity and feeling like I went to the place that we go when we pass, like this is what we look like, color, shape, wisp, all of these different stuff going on, and feeling like, okay, this is what eternity looks like. You can't even, it doesn't look like what we see now, what I'm saying, the physical reality. And so I feel like I'm going there and then coming to grips with death almost, right? Okay, it's not going to be so bad. This is where we came from. We're going to return, and everyone's done it. But now, like, I'm having these weird, and it just comes in waves now of like my own mortality. Like, you're not going to matter, in a few years, 30 years, you're not going to matter. You're going to be forgotten in 50 years, maybe, and just the small things. And one thing that really makes me remember that, or makes me go into these things, is I'm really big on nostalgia, but like going back and remembering childhood stuff that doesn't exist anymore, right? The place where you used to live is now another family's living. There's no trace that you were even there, and you have these memories and these beautiful encounters, but that's only in here. Like you can't share that with anybody. Maybe if you tell them in a story, draw a picture, whatever, but that doesn't exist anymore. And I have dreams where I go visit childhood friends, and those friends, they live in different houses, and it's just this weird realm of your own mortality, man, and like where you're going to go when when you leave. And we're all doing things to either take us out of our body or have these encounters with heaven and angels and whatever. But then the small things in life that we, grasp, man, just this existence, chocolates, like all of these little beautiful friendships, that this time is running out as far as this encounter goes, and it's going to look like something else. People complain, people have a hell of a time in this body, but it's so beautiful and it's running out. It's kind of scary. Like, it really is. I don't know if we get to do it again. I talk to people who talk about reincarnating over and over, and this is it. I do expect something greater and something more beautiful on the other side, but this life, this conversation, man, these people, it's beautiful. It's not bad. You know what I'm saying? And is that part of what you've experienced, like in the void as well?
In the course of my explorations and, going in the quote unquote classroom, there's a lot of things that have brought me to a point like my philosophy is, number one, spirituality is in my life in so much as it's practical.
Yeah.
In so much as it adds value right now. I don't give a shit if it's true or not.
Yeah.
I give a shit of whether or not it adds the most value for the most people, right? So looking at things in terms of, number one, practicality, and number two, I don't disbelieve in a lot of things. A lot of people talk about ascended masters and reincarnation and all of this. And there are experiences that I've had that could lend themselves towards giving credibility to those things. But there are other possible explanations for those things as well. And so I look at it and I go, well, if I can't, if it's conjecture, it's something that I'll consider and look at and explore. But I want to deal with the things that I can observe, right? What is observable to me? And I've had observable experiences of something beyond this realm. So that to me is unquestionable. But I also look at it and I go, what if it's not, to me, I think that it's possible that part of the problem that we have in the world today is this effort that we make at transcendence, right? Like, we're trying in all kinds of different ways to transcend something, whether it's through religion and this idea that, if you're righteous enough or you do good enough, you're going to transcend this earthly plane and get to heaven where it's better there someday, maybe. Whether it's the technological advancement that we make through science and everything else, that, hey, we're going to arrive at some singularity somewhere. And when I look at the universe, what I see I see the infinite. People say, do you believe in God? And I say, no. I don't think that something you can observe requires belief. Right? To me, it's observable. It's an observable phenomenon, whatever you call it, God or whatever. Like life is expressing itself in infinite forms and infinite variety. And maybe that's what I am as well. Right. Mm-hmm. So maybe these experiences of myself beyond this body are not so much this spirit that comes from some other place down to this plane that I want to get back to. Maybe it's all the same thing. Right. Mm-hmm. Like, maybe this body is the empty space inside a clay vessel, right? And maybe, or another analogy is maybe this body is a leaf. And because I've had these experiences with medicines where I zoomed out and I'm shown this aspect of myself that is beyond this body, that is expressing through this body. And so maybe my body is like a leaf on a branch, and that branch is on a bigger branch. And there's a lot of branches that come off that branch, which explains why there are people that I feel a kinship with in this world, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe they come off the same branch as me. And that branch comes off a bigger branch and eventually comes off the trunk. And the trunk's got the roots and there's a whole fucking grove, that goes on for eternity. I don't know. Yeah. But maybe this body is just a leaf. And maybe that explains more of what people call reincarnation is that leaf is going to wither and fall to the ground, but the leaf is not all that I am, but it's definitely an integral part of what I am. Yeah. Right. So maybe there's this something, what I'll call it my mythical body. Right. And I've seen it, like I've been in ceremony. I've looked at my wife and I've seen hers, my wife she's German. But the mythical body that I've seen in her is like this warrior god, like this Celtic goddess, right? Mm-hmm. Tattoos on one side of her face, like badass bitch. Like, my wife is the sweetest. She's this tiny little gorgeous German girl, and she's the sweetest, most nurturing woman. But there's this soul that inhabits her that is just, beyond this earth. And I think that our ancestors were more connected with that aspect of themselves than we are. Yeah. Right. And so, whether or not there is these other realms that I'm going to go back to, I don't know. For me, I look at it and I go, whether there's that, whether there's reincarnation, whether I get just this one life and then I go live with Jesus forever, or whether it's kind of like what I just described, like this is it, this is my body, this is my life, and then I return back to the earth and my consciousness, expresses in some other way. Anyway I look at it, anyway I slice it, the answer is still the same. Live my life and maximize the gift that it is to be being breathed, to be being, my heart pumped and to be experiencing. Like, isn't this maybe the highest purpose and calling of all life is for life to express and experiences itself,
Yeah. To make the most out of whatever incarnation you have. It's, I think my fear is the fact that what if this reality is better than what we're going to, what if this is heaven and then we turn back where we wake up and we're these, bodies laying like in the Matrix with all these bodies that are just tapped into the dream state. What if this is like, I want to be here, I want to stay here, if that's what we're going back to, Yeah. So anyway, but no, it just helps you just to make the most out of it, man, and help other people experience what you've experienced, whether it's through spirituality or through the psychedelics as well, because I'm very big on the fact of I don't care about your doctrine, your theology, unless it can help somebody. If you can't explain it to a child or whatever the case is, like something practical that can make me a better father. Like, what is your doctrine? And your that's what I'm into. I wanted to ask you, I have a couple more questions for you, man. I was going to ask you, where does God fit into all this? But I think we're kind of, touching on that throughout this whole thing. But I wanted to ask you in the fact that you came out of the Mormon church, and before we went live, you told me you came out of it is into, you know what I'm saying, polygamy and things like that, the sect that you came out of. You almost called it a cult, but you stopped yourself, you know.
Yes. Well, I said I wouldn't quite call it a cult, but it was a very fundamental religion.
Is there a disconnect 100%? Did you have to abandon everything? Were there things that you were able to keep? God, do you see plant medicine maybe in the Bible, or I don't know how big you were on scripture and things like that. Did you have to abandon all of it, or does God still kind of fit into that worldview with how you see things now?
Well, here's what's interesting is, I mean, first of all, when I left, I was 18 when I left, and I didn't actually abandon the belief system. I actually was quite convinced I was going to hell, but I wanted to get out and see the world. Right. So for the first 10 years of my life, that's kind of the space I was in. I was actually afraid to let go of the beliefs that I was raised with, but I was more of like a Jack Mormon. And then my son was born, and that was the first time I began to ask myself, like, what do I really believe? What do I want to teach him? What is the life I want to give him? You know, and that set me on sort of a path of questioning everything and eventually putting those beliefs up on the shelf and being willing to consider the possibility that they weren't true. But then I basically from that point, I just came to a place of just like utter, like, it's all bullshit. Like, that's the space I was in. Like, holy cow, I can't believe that I was duped by all this bullshit for so long. And then plant medicine. And I think that, you know, having lost that, because in spite of all the BS that I was raised with, one of the things that I'm really grateful for is that I had a mother who, for whatever else she may or may not have done, she really instilled in me a love for God, right? And an appreciation for something beyond. And so I think part of the things that caused the pain and the depression and things for me in the past were feeling like that was all just a lie, feeling disconnected from everything. And then plant medicine sort of reawakened that and helped me to see, holy cow, there is something beyond all of this. And it's been right there in front of my eyes. Like, my first experiences in Colombia, in Peru with the ayahuasca, it wasn't like a realization, it was a remembering.
There you go.
It was like remembering something and coming home to a place that I had been lost from and searching for all over the place. And so there was that. And then I had an experience with ayahuasca, which is a psilocybin combined with another medicine. And I did a retreat in Holland with that. And that was where I always say that brought me back to Christ. Like, wow. And by that, I mean, you know, that helped me to understand Christ in a way that worked for me.
Yeah.
You know, I think everybody gets to have their own relationship with that, whatever that is. But that helped me understand, you know, because I remember as a kid growing up going, wait a minute, like, Jesus is my only begotten son in whom I'm well pleased. Well, what about me, mother? Yeah. Right? Like, I'm your son too, right? And that's where
well, you
understanding.
Were the only begotten son.
Yeah. Like, why is he so special? Yeah. And coming to realize this, like, what that meant, and that is in all of us.
It makes it more real. It makes the hero's journey more real. It makes Jesus more real, you know, just versus he's this, you know, ascended figure. Like, you are him, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're going through that encounter as well, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And this actually kind of ties back to some of the things we were saying a moment ago, is like Rudolf Steiner, who's one of the, you know, Christian mystics from about 150 years ago, I think. He said something that really stuck with me. He was talking about Christ, and he says, you know, most of us have this paradigm of Christ as being, you know, Christ on one end and Satan or Lucifer or whatever on the other end. And he said, you know, another perspective is to understand, first of all, that you have on one end of the spectrum, you have Lucifer, which means the bearer of light. Mm-hmm. On the other end of the spectrum, you have what he called Ahriman, which is sort of equivalent to Satan, which is, equivalent to Maya, what the Hindus call Maya, which is just the illusion, this materialistic illusion that we live in. So on the one end, you have Lucifer, which is spiritual, etheric, the light. And on the other hand, you have Satan or Ahriman or Maya, which is this material illusion, getting lost and getting stuck in this illusion. And he said, Christ is here in the middle. Mm-hmm. Christ is the meeting of those two things, right? So it's not opposites, it's a spectrum, and balance is where you find that Christ self. And whether or not that's the truth or not, it's not something I bother with it, but it is a perspective that I find value in. And then as far as like coming back to Christianity or any of those things, I don't really consider myself a Christian, even though, I just said that really kind of brought me back to Christ. Mm-hmm. Like, I think it was helping me to understand forgiveness and understand, unconditional love. Yeah. And recognizing that these are, that love is it's not a feeling, or it's not affection. It's not compassion. It's not this. Those are byproducts of love. Those are outcomes of love. But recognizing that love is the recognition of myself or of God in what I see. Love is the coming home to myself in some way. And so every judgment that I have on everything out there, it is in some form or the other, some expression of me. And realizing that if I were you, with the sum total of your experiences, if I were consciousness that was coming through the same womb as you, with the same ancestry as you, the same epigenetics as you, the same experiences that happened to my mother while she was carrying me in the womb, this everything that has come together and conspired to shape you, I would be exactly as you are because I am you, and finding the forgiveness for others in that and for myself. And realizing, because I remember coming in that sermon, I was in hell for 2 hours. It's just in hell, and thinking that, there's no way out of this. And all of a sudden there was like this grace just reached in and lifted me out. Yeah. And I understood forgiveness. And I came up and I was crying and I said, I forgive you. I forgive you. I forgive you. I was speaking to myself. That's where it comes from, right? Mm-hmm. That's where it originates, that forgiveness for myself. And finding compassion for all the things that I have been so hard on myself about. And so for me, to answer your question, for me, plant medicine was an experience that made me go, oh shit, I think I threw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
And I went back and I'm going and I'm looking now. If I read the New Testament, I'm reading the words of Jesus in the New Testament. I'm like, dude, this is deep. Like, how did I miss this? I grew up with this every Sunday. It was getting drilled in my head. And how did I miss it? Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. It shows you, you get a new appreciation for it. And then if he existed or whatever the case is, that story is not in vain. Like, I get it now. Yes. You know what I'm saying? I get it. Yes. Well, I don't have to be a Christian. I don't have to be going to Sunday service or follow the rules and tenets of organized religion, but I get Jesus. I don't get all this other stuff, but I get Jesus. I really do. You know what I'm saying? And that's beautiful, man. Going back to, I got a couple more questions for you here, just about psychedelics and things. And
but before you jump to the next thing, just one more thing on that subject, and I think this would be I find this immensely entertaining and amusing. So I'm sure your listeners will. So Mormonism, founded by Joseph Smith in the 1800s, 1830 is when he organized the Mormon Church for the first time, and there was visions and prophecies and all kinds of things, and everybody in the early days of the church was having these visions. Well, if you do your research, what you find out is like the probability, the likelihood that Joseph Smith was using plant medicines, spiking his sacrament wine with datura and different psychedelics, and producing visionary states in his followers, and actually using these plant medicines to, or create this religion. Like, I think the probability of that in my perspective is probably 100%. And I think, and a lot of people are like, well, that's, there's something really awful about that. Like altering people's state of consciousness without their knowledge and against their will, and setting yourself up as a prophet and all of these things. And I think that's a conversation that could be had and debated at length. But for me, here's a perspective on that when I zoom out and I look at why would consciousness or God or the universe, why would that happen the way that has? If you look at the evolution of religion, right? And you have like Catholicism for a long time, this very oppressive, this is the way sort of a thing. And then you had sort of this enlightenment that comes along with Luther and Calvin and the Reformation. And then from that, there was a series of smaller reformations. And then Mormonism was born in what was called the Great Reformation in the early 1800s. And Mormonism, interestingly enough, that was the first religion that I'm aware of because one of the premises that Joseph Smith was telling people was that you are God's in embryo, right? The first time people had heard that, even though Jesus was fucking saying it, know ye not that ye are gods, right? But to me, I look at it and I see there's sort of this evolution in the consciousness of humanity where rather than looking at Mormonism as like good, bad, right, wrong, and Catholicism and everything else, I look at it and I go, it added value. It definitely added value for me. It laid a foundation for me that has really blessed my life. Once I let go of all the bitterness about things that weren't so nice. Yeah. Even I can see the gift in those things. Yeah. So I think that just completes that conversation.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of people there, and that's kind of why this podcast exists as well. Like I said, we have people who are coming out of different sects of Christianity, and they're embracing more of spiritual ideas. They're having their own spiritual awakening, and they need somebody to kind of articulate what they're experiencing. And then on the other hand, those, whether they be really new age or spiritual, to kind of embrace Christ, to look at this Jesus figure, what he brought to the table, the scriptures, like, the magic and beauty of the Bible in and of itself, and like, the laws of God, or like I like to call the universal laws, right? What I'm saying? Like, for me, they're facts, man. I've based my life upon them. At least all the beautiful stuff. Now, there's a lot of crazy stuff, and I think it's all esoteric and analogy and allegory as well. But once you get the meaning of the allegory, the meaning of the hero's journey, whatever, apply it to your life, and then you see the magic unfold. So to really introduce people to that, and not, like you said, throw the baby out with the bathwater. Some people have to, like, even if it's just for a period of time, I've been lied to, they told me this, and blah, blah, and they just got to get away from it, and I understand that, but some people, they want to hang on to their faith and still be able to talk about their paranormal encounters, to talk about the magic of a psilocybin encounter, like to act like it didn't happen because the religion or church doesn't accept that conversation. And for me to act like, well, nope, it didn't change my life. It didn't help me. I never had it because you don't want me to talk about it. And just being a beacon to be open and honest. And that's what everybody's saying in the chat, even about you, as you're just being authentic or whatever. And that's the beauty of, because you can't be authentic in religion. In the Mormon church, in the Christian church, in the Catholic church, you can't say, well, I meditate, I do yoga, they're going to get rid of you. So just to create this new space that we're in moving forward, where we can be authentic and we can love Jesus and love psilocybin, where we can love Buddha and love Jesus at the same time. Like, you know what I'm saying? And we're like recreating this stuff and just being honest about it. You don't have to act like you don't do something or like something,
Yeah, and I think there's nothing wrong with anywhere anybody chooses to be, whether you want to hold on to your faith, whether you want to continue to identify this way, whether, it's like, what adds value for you? Like, that's it. And let's let you be you and relate to God and Jesus and the universe in a way that works for you, and let me be me. And as long as we're not over here trying to force our views on each other, we can.
Did you used to do that? When you were Mormon, did you used to do that? Did you used to proselytize at all as a Mormon and try to convince people and win them over?
I didn't. The way I grew up, we were very much a fringe group. Mainstream Mormonism has a very active, very proactive missionary program, as I'm sure everybody knows. Has probably had somebody knock on your door at least once or twice. But it's not something that I ever did. In fact, because we were polygamists, and polygamy has been prosecuted and persecuted and illegal. We grew up sort of in fear. Both of my grandfathers spent time in prison for being polygamists. Wow, so we kind of kept to ourselves quite a bit.
Because that even doing that, like, there's a big, that changes your brain, right? You have to go and you have to convince people that you're right versus just, hey, I don't care. Like, this is what works for me. I understand that works for you, and I'm happy with it. But coming from that religious mindset, you have to like convince people, like, I'm right. This is the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the most authentic way to share the truth, if you feel like you have it, is to live it. To shut your damn mouth and live it, and let people look at you and go, oh my God, what is going on with this? Like, holy cow, I want to be like that. Yep. And then maybe they come and ask you, hey, what are you doing? It's working for you. Like, I want some of that.
It's really interesting because that's how like, Freemasonry, that's how they operate. They don't go around proselytizing, hey, you want to be a Mason? Fill out this card. They don't do that. They live their life, and their rule and motto is ask one to be one. You have to see their life and see their fruit and see how they live, and you have to ask them. They can't come to you, hey son, I tell you the secrets of the universe. They can't do that. It's really interesting. Couple more questions about this, the plant medicines here, just for my own understanding. Have you tried salvia leaves, the salvia divinorum leaves, not the extract, which was like a big thing here in the States where people are buying it at the head shop and losing control of their body. But the leaves have seem really interesting to me. I've been intrigued with them for years, but I don't know how or where to get them. But from documentaries and things like that, look really interesting. Have you had experience with those?
I have minimal experience. I'll just tell you all of my experience with salvia. So my initial experiences were with the tincture. And I think that if a person is going to work with salvia, a tincture is a good way to go. Like if you can't get your hands on actual fresh leaves themselves, tincture is the most controlled way to dose yourself. Whatever you do, don't smoke it. I've done that too. That was a terrifying experience. You cannot control your dosage. Yeah. And salvia can take you anywhere from like a gentle meditative state to full blown, out of body, don't know who I am. Yeah. I have also had experience with fresh leaves, chewing them. And that was in Costa Rica. We organized a retreat several years ago with some entrepreneurs, and among other things, I have some connections down there, and they were able to get me some freshly grown salvia leaves, which we chewed, and that was actually a really positive experience.
Cool.
Very, very gentle.
As far as like tobacco, using the connecting with the tobacco spirits, have you tried hape or rape?
Yes.
What's your experience with that? Do you find that it grounds you or helps you tap in a little bit better?
Yes.
So if you go into it,
absolutely. And there's many, many different types of hape, as you probably know. so like Hape is a whole branch that you can actually explore. And I don't have much expertise in Hape. I do use it sometimes in facilitating. I find, especially when somebody, sometimes, and I'll use different Hapes. Sometimes we'll use a very gentle Hape to sort of ground somebody who's kind of having a hard time being in their body. Sometimes we use more of a harsher Hape. And that can help people who because sometimes you get people that are very much in their head and they're having a hard time getting out of their head and just getting into it. And they're trying to control their experience. And so sometimes Hape will actually kind of help them, give them a push, so to speak.
It's been a positive experience for me. If you go into it, right. Cause we'll do it with friends over who like want to try it or whatever. We'll just do it in passing, hanging out, and you can feel it. It's cool, whatever. You may get lightheaded or something, but if you do it and close your eyes and go into the feeling, especially being outside, put your feet on the ground and actually grounding when you do it and releasing, because you're gonna release, you're gonna drain, so it's there's that releasing there. But if you go into it, it makes the experience way better. It's almost like you would say like, going into it with intention. Like, I'm not just going to do it in passing. I'm going to do it. And because I got my friend Chris here, because I've done it and showed it to him, and he did some. He ordered it, and he was doing it every day. He's in chat right now. He was just walking around just like a cigarette. He's just everywhere he goes, and he knocked it out.
And it is tobacco, right? So, I mean, I think that's something that people got to be aware of is like, it's an addictive substance if you allow it to be.
Chris.
And, and you do get to choose again, what kind of relationship are you going to have with these things? Because you can cheapen it over time. And I've been there, for me, tobacco
could do that as well. Microdosing, like, as you just you do it every day, or?
Microdosing is when with psilocybin and with most microdosing, you're doing it every few days. Okay. Right, because you build up temporary tolerance, exactly. So you don't want to do it every day, because then you have to keep taking increasing amounts to get the same results. And also, it's kind of like working out. How you don't want to work out the same muscle every day. You want to work it out, and then you want to give it a chance to. So you want to give your neural pathways a chance to rewire and do the thing that they're going to do. And I don't think. In fact, my experience has been with things like psilocybin, ayahuasca. By and large, not inherently addictive substance. If anything, my tendency has been to take ayahuasca, the less I want to do it. Every time I go to do ayahuasca, I only go when I'm really feeling called. Like when I feel like the ayahuasca is saying, "Come here, it's time." And even then, I'm like, "Okay, I could give myself up for this." Right? It's not something that I'm like, oh yeah, let's go do some. Again, like we said earlier, I think that people can get addicted to the bliss chasing or the, sort of the
instant gratification. Instant gratification on any level is not good. It took me a long time to figure that out, but that instant fix, there it is. You have to work for that gratification. You have to work to build a good business, a good friendship, a good relationship with your wife. It takes work. And so to have something that you really enjoy the feelings and emotions, because you're working hard to maintain it and to get there. So anytime you just get a quick fix, it's never good. And so it lasts too, if it's something that's like that. So, and I talk about my experiences and stuff too. And I've only had a couple, but they've been super impactful on my life. I've done the microdosing and stuff as well. But I always kind of give the disclaimer that I don't want to promote it as far as like, you need to do it. I feel like if it's calling you, you have to do it. Because that's how I felt. It was calling me. I'm just watching stuff, and I'm like, maybe not. And finally, it's just, I'm calling you. Watch these documentaries. You got to do it. And it's like, if it calls you, you have to do it. It's not going to let you go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always tell people, number one, don't ever bucket list it. Like, don't ever do it because it's like, hey, I want to have this experience before I die. Like, that's not a reason to do it. Yeah. I mean, if you want to, try it, right? But if it, like you said, if it's calling and it's really clear, hey, like if you know my advice to people is just trust yourself, trust your own knowing, and just trust that, because when you go into, especially if it's your first experience, you need to be able to go into it with that trust. And so that no matter what comes up, if you go into it and you don't have that trust with yourself and you start having a rough experience, you're just going to amplify the difficult experience because you're freaking out going, oh, I shouldn't have done this. Oh, this is really bad. Rather than being able to go, okay, this is freaking me out. And I know this is where I'm supposed to be. So there's something here for me. So let's look at it. Let's be with it. Because that's what makes it different. Like people say, oh, what about bad trips? I'm like, there are no bad trips. There's just trips where things come up that you didn't want to look at and be with. Yeah. That's all a bad trip is.
Man, that's, my second encounter, the first encounter, I thought I was an expert. It was with psilocybin, and it was I wouldn't say it was a microdose. I think we did like 2 grams, and we did it in a float tank as well, which was beautiful. Real philosophical, looking over your life, combing over your life. I got a lot of direction and putting pieces together and writing plans down and stuff, and it was beautiful. And I went and I did interviews. Okay, yeah, if you want to do mushrooms, it called me and I did it. And I'm speaking on it as an expert. A few months later, we do another men's retreat and we go out into the woods and we do the big one I was telling about, where I pretty much did a hero dose, but I'm trying to help facilitate it with a friend of mine, and I kind of already expected kind of the same thing. This is how it feels. This is what it looks like. And took a hero dose, and it was like 5 to 7 grams or something, and felt it pulling, and I started feeling uneasy, like, oh, hold on, what's going on here? Walk outside trying to get a breath of fresh air, and then start seeing the webbing forming into particles and matter, and like, oh Lord, I think we need to call the cops. I think I took too much. I think this is poison. All of these different things that come in, and I go inside and I look at my buddy. He's looking at me smiling. He's like, man, you just got to let go, bro. Don't fight it. It's like, I don't know, man. It's like, yeah, fighting it. I feel it pulling me out of my body. I'm like, I'm trying to hang on, It's like, okay, the panic and okay, let go. It's like, we're in it now. Just let go. And finally I let go, and whoosh, you go in and you go on that roller coaster ride, man. And it's beautiful. And it's crazy like that. There's a couple more questions I want to make sure I get to, because there's some people in the chat here who are just asking questions as we're naming some of these different plant medicines and teachers. Someone's wanting to know, this was, I believe, Dumbledore's Auras asking about Iboga. Have you had any experience with
Dumbledore is a great name. Iboga. Yes, I have had an experience with Iboga. And it was one of the most difficult experiences in my life. It was very, very challenging. It was 18 hours.
Wow.
Of feeling like there was a meat grinder just grinding my psyche.
That's
for 18 hours, and all I could do is just breathe.
You had to did you have to make yourself breathe? Like, it wasn't just like, let me relax. Like, were you conscious of each breath? Like, okay, there's the breath. That's the breath. Was it one of those trips?
It's not like I was going to stop breathing if I didn't, but it was more like, it was like the only way for me to get through this is to be with it. Like just to sit and go, God, I hope this is over. That would just destroy me. So the only thing I could do was just focus on each and every breath and just breathe in and breathe out and let it be what it was.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, in fact, I'm going to be going down and doing another Iboga experience this year. And, after coming out of that one, so a lot of people come out of Iboga and they have, everybody, generally speaking, they all are in agreement that it's very difficult, very challenging.
Yeah.
But a lot of people come out of it with like a ton of clarity, like the Iboga spirit came to them, or their higher self was just speaking to them really clearly. And they were asking questions and getting like these really clear answers. Like, I didn't get any of that in my Iboga journey. It was literally, it was just a really, really difficult, challenging experience. And when I came out of it, I was in tears, and I was like, because there's what they call the gray period, the facilitators, people. And by the way, I just want to emphasize this. Don't do Iboga by yourself. Don't do it by yourself, and don't do it with somebody who doesn't know what the hell they're doing. I can recommend really good facilitator if anybody's interested in that. But there's a gray period when you come out of that, and you just feel like you have just had the shit beat out of you inside and out. And then you fall asleep at some point, and you sleep for a long time. And when you wake up from that, you just feel really bright and clear and clean and refreshed. So when I was in that gray period, like I was just in tears. I was like, I am never doing that again, like ever. Like that was the worst experience of my life. But coming out of it, I also knew like it was really clear. The Iboga was telling me, I want you to come back. So coming out of it, I was like, no fucking way. And then the next morning when I woke up, I was like, okay, yeah, I can see clearly now that, this is part of a bigger process and that I'm being called back. But it was rough.
Yeah.
It really was.
Ralston wants to know about San Pedro, your experiences with that, and if how it's linked to treating addiction, if any of that info.
Well, first of all, I think all plant medicines actually have a tremendous amount of potential for treating addiction. And Iboga, again, if you're dealing with addiction, I would recommend looking into working with a Iboga facilitator. Ayahuasca also, Dr. Gabor Mate is, he's an incredible, just dealing with addiction, helping people deal with addiction, understanding the root cause of addiction. He works with ayahuasca with a lot of his patients. So if you're dealing with addiction of any kind, plant medicines can be really supportive of that. San Pedro definitely has the capacity to support you in that. But I think the essence of the main thrust of the kind of support that you receive from the plant medicines is two things. One of them is that they have the capacity to introduce you to the root causes of your addiction. Right? Dr. Mate says the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. Right? So plant medicines, what they tend to do when you go in the classroom is take you and show you where you disconnected yourself, where you made up this story that you're not lovable, that you're not worthy, that you're this, that you're that, and how you created that. So you understand the constructs that you've created that have you reaching for something to substitute that addiction. And also, by the way, it helps to really look at what it is you're addicted to and what is that addiction providing for you. So for me, like tobacco, cigarettes was something that I've dealt with off and on for the better part of my life. And really getting to the root of that involved having to look at, like, what is it that was doing for me? It was calming for me. First of all, the way I inhaled is not the way everybody inhales. My way of inhaling would draw the smoke back so that it would hit the back of my throat in a very specific spot and soothe my throat. And this is because for most of my life, I grew up feeling like I didn't have a voice. The way that I was raised and things I was raised with, I made up the story that, it wasn't okay for me to speak my truth. And that's a journey that I had to go on. So looking at what it is you're doing, what is alcohol doing for you? I have a friend who was addicted to alcohol. What he realized is he was using it as a social lubricant, right? He wanted to be able to let his real self shine when he was around people. And so being able to look at that and use different ways to get the same result, right? But the other thing that plant medicine does for you, one of them is it shows you your stories and what you created. The other thing that it does for you, depending on the plant medicine, is the purging, energetically purging, and sometimes physiologically purging. So Iboga is shown to actually physically address the physical cravings for heroin, which is a really difficult one to get past. Ayahuasca will actually help resolve a lot of those physical urges as well. But they also tend to purge out energetically, like the energies that are feeding on your pain. You know, if you want to call them entities or whatever it is you want to call them, but whatever it is that's feeding on that, that's kind of keeping that in place for you, they can help purge those. Now, if you go back into your life and you reinsert yourself into the same kinds of situations and scenarios that invited those things into your space in the first place, they'll come back in. It's kind of like, you know, getting surgery and having, you know, something removed, having an infection removed, and then you're careless with the bandage and you let it get reinfected. You know, a lot of people do that.
This is kind of a new one. I think I've heard it in passing. This is a word here wants to know about your insight with Datura intoxia, known as the angel's trumpet.
Yeah. So what I can tell you about it is not a plant to be fucked with by any stretch of the imagination. Be very, very cautious and careful. There are different aspects of that. So Toei, as in some parts of South America, they call it Toei brugmansia, angel's trumpet. That's the version of it that they use in South America. And some shamans will actually mix that in with their ayahuasca brews. So if you're going to go down and work with ayahuasca, first of all, be very, very careful and very selective about who you choose to work with.
Reviews are good at this point, right? Yelp and things like that, right?
Well, I would definitely check into reviews and pay attention to those. But also like just really, really use common sense and tune into your heart. Listen very carefully to your intuition and trust that intuition. And don't go with any old, you know, somebody who's like if you get off the plane in Iquitos and jump in a taxi, I guarantee you that the taxi driver is going to be like, "Oh, you're here for ayahuasca."
Yeah.
My cousin, you know, Don't go with that guy. But they'll mix Toei into their brews. And a lot of them are doing it just because like Toei produces very realistic, like with most plant medicines, ayahuasca, psilocybin, most of it, you know, you might have visuals, but it's really obvious to you that those are not physical reality.
Yeah.
With Datura, you don't have that ability to distinguish most of the time, right? So you can't tell a lot of times if what you're seeing is really there or not. You might be sitting there having a conversation with somebody and thinking they're a real person, and suddenly they're not there. Happens a lot. In America, you have Jimson weed, right? Jamestown weed.
That's what somebody in the comment section said that,
Yeah, and that's related to, it's from the same family, and these are all nightshades. Very toxic, by the way. You take too much, you can die. And it's very hard to dose properly. I don't work with it. I haven't ingested it to my knowledge. It is something that, like I have a very distinct feeling that I will be working with it at some point. And I'm listening in very carefully for that. So I know that it's calling to me. I don't know if that's going to be a one-time deal or how that's going to work. Also, there are different ways to work with it. And Datura has two different, I forget what the word is. Basically there's a scientific term for it, and I can't think of it. The compounds that are psychoactive, Datura has two of them, and one of them can really, really fuck with your sanity, right? And so if you work with people who really, really know how to work with that plant, they know how to administer it in a way that you get the one that you want, the compound that you want, and you don't get the compound that you don't want. Because a lot of people come out of experiences with Datura having usually temporary, but in some cases permanent psychosis.
Yeah.
And most people, especially people that do not respect the plant, will come out of it having very, very dark and disturbing, so that even if they're not dealing with psychosis or, permanent psychological damage, they are very traumatized by it. It's not a plant to mess with.
What about is there a difference that you can tell between psilocybin as far as like the golden teachers or the Hawaiians versus the Amanita muscaria? Is there different level of potency? I know there's a different experience that kind of comes on with each strain, but specifically the golden teachers is what I'm used to, that in the Hawaiians. But I'm seeing online that you can actually order Amanita muscaria in America. It's legal to order it. So but I've never tried it. So moving forward with that, what's some advice you would give?
So there's a couple of threads there, things that are coming up that I think are good to touch on. One of them is psilocybin and Amanita muscaria are actually two different mushrooms, not even different strains, but they're different types of psychoactive mushrooms. So Amanita muscaria is the little toadstool ones that you see in a lot of like sacred literature and stuff like that. Those are the little red ones with the white dots on them. And some of those, by the way, some of those are poisonous and some of them are not. Like, you really need to know what you're looking at. Don't just go out and go, oh, there's a red and white dot. I think I'll take that one home and make a tea out of it. Don't do that. The Amanita muscaria is the shamans in Siberia. There's actually for anybody who's interested in looking it up, I won't go into detail, but actually the traditions of Santa Claus and Christmas and all of that stuff actually stems from that mushroom and the Sami people in Scandinavia and the reindeer and all of that kind of stuff. The reindeer will eat that mushroom. They love it. They'll dig it up in the wintertime, eat that shit up. And then the shamans will drink the piss from the reindeer because that mushroom, if you take that mushroom itself, it can have some really nasty side effects. But if the reindeer eats it and then you drink the piss, you get all the buzz without the side effects. So Amanita muscaria tends to produce feelings of euphoria and sensations of flying. I haven't worked with Amanita muscaria. That hasn't called to me. I've done a lot of research on it. As far as psilocybin goes and all these different strains, so there's cubensis, there's golden teachers, there's literally psilocybin grows all over the world and different strains have developed all over the world. And I think that there are very subtle differences. Each one has slightly different personalities. And I think, I don't think it's really important right out of the gate what you start with. I would suggest starting with something like golden teachers or cubensis or something that, has a really wide base of usage that, you're not going to have a difficult time with. And then as you get to working with it more, you can actually start to find the difference in the personalities and the subtleties. Ayahuasca, incidentally, because you're talking about how these different plants have different things that they teach you and different personalities. Well, there's different strains of ayahuasca. In fact, there's 4 main vines. There's the yellow vine, the black vine, the red vine, and I think the white vine, right? Which are, interestingly enough, those are the 4 sacred colors of Native Americans all over the place. But each one of these vines, if you brew a different vine, it would take you into different dimensions. And so like the shamans that I work with in Colombia, they call it, one of them, they call it the snake vine because it takes you into the realm of snakes. There's another one they call it the tiger vine. And my experience of it has been literally, so what they do, the people that I work with in Colombia, is they use different brews of ayahuasca for different purposes. So you'll come in, let's say you're down there for a week, you'll come in and like the first ceremony, and they'll actually do daytime ceremonies, which is not really common. But for these people, this is the Ingano people in Colombia. they actually do daytime ceremonies. And so you'll come in and you'll have a daytime ceremony, maybe in the beginning, which is really beautiful. And it kind of gets the process rolling for you. And then you'll go in and you'll do a nighttime ceremony, and they give you a different brew, and you can tell it's different because it's much thicker and more syrupy, and they give you a smaller cup. The first one was this big bowl, and the second one's this little bowl, but you're tripping harder on that second one than you were on the first one. And you're purging, and there's all kinds of shit coming out, and they're doing work on you, like scraping shit out of your body and things like that. And then they'll give you, on the next one, they'll give you a different cup again. And that one's much more of like it's almost like the first one was scrubbing the shit out of you, and this one's rinsing you. The first one was suds and soap, and this one's just rinsing and cleaning, right? So they really understand how to use these and in what order to use it. And the ayahuasca, and if you let them explain it to you, they'll tell you that the ayahuasca is telling them they have, they're being spoken to by the plants and saying, do this for this person, do this for this person, do this for this person.
Wow. How many people would go on a journey like that? Have you seen, and they take the first one and they're like, nope, that's too much. There's no way I can finish this. I got to go back. And whether it's process all the information that came to them, or it just scared them, or wasn't what they were looking for, and they just cut it off there at that first one.
I've seen a number of people who, in fact, there's a gal that we're really, really good friends now. I took her down to Colombia several years ago. This was her first experience with anything. And, she was a yoga teacher. She was had all kinds of things going on. And she goes into it, and her first ceremony that first night, like, just scared the daylights out of her. Like, she was like in the middle of the ceremony, she's like, this isn't for me. I'm out of here, guys. Like, I'm going to go. Like, and she thought she was not tripping, and she's watching everybody else trip real hard, and that was scaring her. But I could, and I'm on the ayahuasca, and the shaman's on the ayahuasca, and the shaman's speaking to me in Spanish, telling me what to say to her. And we're basically like, okay, if you want to go home tomorrow, you can go home tomorrow. We're not letting you leave here tonight because you have a lot of ayahuasca in your system, and things could go really, really wrong for you. She's like, oh no, I'm not, I'm fine. And we're like, yeah, but you're like, we're going to, for your own safety.
I can't leave. I'm stuck.
Right.
It makes it worse.
But for her, like, what happened for me was, like, the ayahuasca or something started communicating with me. And so I sat down with her and just started connecting with her and listening to her. And I can't even remember the conversation that we had, but what I do remember is, like, getting really clear guidance on what to say and insights. And I was being shown kind of what's going on under the surface that she's not saying, and being able to kind of help her calm down. And when she came out of that, she had a really deep and really profound experience. And fast forward to today, she actually works with plant medicine. She's one of the most, she's gone down and worked with tribes in Brazil. She can tell you more about hape than anybody I know. She's a facilitator for kambo, the frog poison. And she's actually in training right now, learning how to facilitate iboga. So she was able to get past that initial hurdle, changed her freaking life. But a lot of people do. A lot of people come into it and they're like, whoa, this is not what I signed up for. I'm out.
Yeah.
And so what I do is, when I facilitate, first of all, I'm really thorough about going through the process of making sure people are in the right space before we ever go into it, having lots of conversations and creating really clear agreements and letting people know, okay, here's the deal. This is the space that we're going to be in. This is what's going on. And for the duration of this, while you're here, there's like, we're in a remote place where, like, people aren't going to run out the door and be running down the street naked. Like, we're out in the wilderness or in the wild or somewhere like that. And it gives people sort of the freedom to, if they're going to have a little bit of freak out moment, and we have, support. Like, I'm not facilitating these things all by myself. So there's always somebody there keeping an eye on things. There's always somebody there who's sober. There's always somebody there who's going to help, like safety and support is the number one priority. And if you're going to be an effective facilitator, like there's a responsibility that you are taking on. And, I take that really seriously. So we usually do a really good job of helping people avoid getting into that situation in the first place. But I learned how to do that through a lot of trial and error and having people get in there and go, oh shit.
Yeah. Terrence McKenna kind of talks about the plant medicines and psilocybin. He almost looks at it like them being like a walkie-talkie, like a communication device with that spirit or with that angel or whatever that being is or whatever. Like it's encoded in the DNA of that. Like, hey, if you want to communicate, you have to. This is how we're going to do it. I can't come down there. I can't manifest or whatever. But take this, and then we can meet on a level playing field, or you can come into my reality, or whatever the case is. It's very interesting. And you're talking about like being able to kind of hear what the medicine was saying, the teacher behind it kind of saying, hey, do this, tell her this, do that. And that kind of, I want to bring that in because I know that's what you specialize in now, right? You're doing these retreats and taking people into that. As far as in your day-to-day, whether it's any type of spiritual retreats or anything, you do that where there's no medicines used, as far as like, do you do, I was talking about achieving heightened states of awareness through holotropic breathing, kundalini yoga, meditation, those type of things. Do you do that at all? And maybe in a group setting, are you able to tap into those other spirits, those teachers, without having to, you kind of remember, or maybe even, because there's so much information that comes through. Sometimes it comes up later, like, oh, I remember they said that, that type of deal. Do you have open lines of communication with those spirits, those teachers, those plants, and are you able to facilitate it without going into that state?
Well, yeah. So first of all, we do actually do a lot of stuff that doesn't involve plant medicine. Like I said, we'll do wilderness retreats and expeditions, and a lot of the things that we do are actually kind of helping people, just facilitating people diving into their own stuff, right? Going inward, learning how to connect with themselves. You don't need plant medicine really to go in and look at the stories and things you created. And sometimes it helps to do those things first and then do plant medicine as a next step. So you have a better springboard. Yeah. And in terms of all of that, like when I first, to me, I felt like it was really clear to me. I remember the moment and the ceremony and everything where it happened. Like it was really clear. I was in an ayahuasca ceremony and I was being told really clearly, we want you to work with these plants, this particular type of plant. We want you to start out with this particular type of plant. We want you to start facilitating. Don't go back to Germany. Like I was living in Germany at the time. Don't go to Germany, go straight to Utah and start doing the stuff there. And I actually had sort of an argument with the plant, like, no, and lost that argument. So that's kind of where that started. And in my process of, I started working with the shamans down there in Colombia, and they were teaching me a lot of things about how they work with the medicine and different things as far as, learning how to be a hollow bone is kind of the terminology that I'll use, which is, I feel like that an effective facilitator, your job as a facilitator is, number one, to hold a safe, clear, clean container, to get out of your own way, to get out of their way, and to recognize, one of the things that I recognized very early on is that, I'm not the one who's doing the healing. I'm not the one doing it. Like people's ancestors were showing up, people's, their guides and angels, whatever it was for them. There were definitely that. In fact, there were times when I remember seeing somebody was in a really difficult place and they were just, struggling and tripping hard and walking across the room like, I got to go help this person through this process. And I get halfway across and it was like this unseen thing just stopped me right in the middle of it and said, "We got this. Go sit down." Right. And I'm like, oh, and all of a sudden I became aware that there's other beings in the room. And I'm like, and that's where I started to learn to get present to those energies, going into ceremony space and really creating an awareness for those energies. Another time I was in Colombia and was working, the shamans down there, they were doing a ceremony. They were in the Maloka. I had just got done with this really intense purging, a lot of stuff cleaning out, puking my guts out, thirsty, just like, oh, I need water. And so I went into the Maloka and and in the Maloka, they're working with somebody on the ground. They had this person laid out and they had crystals and they had some stones and some things that they were doing. And she was kind of doing her thing, like, shaking her leaves over the person. And her daughter was standing there, who she works with her daughter and they facilitate together sometimes. And the water was in there on the shelf behind him. And I'm not even thinking about it. Like, I'm just like, oh, I just want water. And I went in and I grabbed the water, went into that space where they were working, grabbed the water, pour myself a cup and start drinking. It was my left hand, start drinking the cup. And I get halfway through and I just felt something grab my hand like this. And like all of a sudden the cup starts shaking. And her daughter looks at me. She looks right to my left, like there's somebody standing there, looks at me again. She reaches over and she takes the cup out of my hand, like looking at me like, you're in trouble, right? And my hand just went like this, and I went into an arm lock behind my back. And I felt this just turn me and walk me out of the Maloka. Like, these are when I say that there's experiences that I've had that are just unquestionable for me. Yeah. There's something going on. And it took me outside of Maloka, walked me outside, turned me in a circle 3 times and laid me down on the grass. And it was really like, the message was really clear. Respect the space. We're working here. And it was also like, not just respect the space. It was also because if you are going to be working with these plants, if you're going to be doing this kind of work, you need to get present to other things that are going on in the space, besides just, I'm so thirsty or whatever it is that's going on for you. You need to get a little bit more awareness in your space. And so that was like a lesson for me that really, really drilled it in. And so those kinds of experiences, like, there's no question for me that there's something beyond the 4 senses, that there's energies there working with us, or intelligences. I don't have any conjecture or stories or anything that I make up about what those are. But I do, it's unquestionable to me that it's there.
Mm-hmm. Concerning marijuana, I know you said you've tried it a couple of times. It just doesn't agree well with you, or whatever the case is. You said, I had those encounters as well. Like, I smoked my entire childhood and teenage years. I was smoking marijuana daily, or whatever the case is, and then got to a place where like it started messing with me, making it hard to breathe. I turned pale, heart's racing, and just kind of messing with my body. Happened to me twice. Woke up the next day after having this panic attack that lasts for 2-3 hours, woke up the next day and felt different. Something, the neurotransmitters got burnt out, or something happened with the marijuana. And so every time I would smoke, that would happen. Even just one hit would send me into this weird spell. It's very scary. It ended up and that was I think that happened when I was 15, 16. Growing up, I eventually would talk to people who would say, yeah, I can't smoke weed. It does this to my body. I had to go to the hospital from smoking weed and all that. So it's okay, I'm not alone. There's other people. And then with the internet, you're able to look up and say, okay, there's other people who have depersonalization. After smoking marijuana, they'd smoke every day. But then this one time they smoked, they feel like they're stuck in a dream state. And that happened to me when I was 15. took me a long time to, and I think it still had an effect on me even today. Like things of what happened, I'm 35, what happened when I was 15 smoking pot. I don't know whether it's, what I'm saying, the young mind, your mind wasn't developed and doing all that or whatever, burnt the neurotransmitters out. So now when I smoke it has a certain type of effect on me. I tried to do it recently. I had some friends come over and they were smoking, and I tried to take a couple hits and then took a little bitty piece of a edible, and the same thing. And like the weird, the grinding sensation, like I'm putting through the grinder and I'm having to make myself breathe, and I'm turning pale and I'm throwing up. And it was a bad, like it was very scary. I hated it. I made the best out of it, because it was a life review, because you feel like you're going to die. It was like a bad trip, on weed. And, and I go online the next day and I read all of this different stuff where people have tried edibles and they're having those experiences on edibles that I had from just smoking. But it's that life review. You feel like you're going to die, and then you automatically start thinking about, what I should have done better, what I could have did. But you're having a life review. I might die, my daughter, my wife, my family, my career, my friends, like, what can I do better? So you get up the next day with like a refreshed, renewed vision. Like, I got another chance at life. I cheated death. Every day on this side of eternity is a blessing, so there's that gratitude that comes from just life in general. Hopefully that, people eventually get that, because gratitude is the best, it is the best medicine really of approaching anything. So did you ever have those kind of experiences? Because when you was explaining, I think it was the Iboga that had something very similar to that. When you said marijuana didn't really agree with you, you just didn't like the way it made you feel, or did you have similar experiences? Yeah,
I mean, I tried marijuana twice, and this was, years. I just tried it recreationally with, some friends, and this was before I'd ever done anything with ayahuasca, or before I woke up to anything. And it just, like, the first time I tried it, like, I couldn't speak, and I didn't like that. So I was like, and I didn't like the fact that people would talk to me, and I would all of a sudden like come back to the conversation and didn't know what they were talking about. I couldn't remember what they had just said, I hated that. Yeah. The second time I tried it, it actually, I vomited as if it was like drinking too much and, throwing up and having a hangover and things like that. And so I was like, I have since then, I've used CBD oil very, very sparingly. I've used it when I was dealing with anxiety a while back. And that I found that very helpful, kind of helped me deal with.
Was there a high off of it? Or because they say the CBD, that most extracts don't have the THC.
This one definitely had THC.
Yeah, that's the problem, right? They say, no, it don't get you high. Then you get it and you're freaking blow it out of your mind.
And it was not a negative experience. It's not something that I particularly enjoyed. It's not something I would do recreationally. Mm-hmm. And I think my thought is, and this may or may not be the case, and I think it's worth considering. My thought is that a lot of people are abusing marijuana. Like marijuana, again, it's a relationship addiction with an intelligence.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're using it as a means of escape, or if you're using it as a way to cope with, or to not have to cope with things, you can do that, and that's what I was using tobacco for. Tobacco is a sacred plant. Tobacco is a very powerful plant. Tobacco they use it in ceremonies to create protection, for cleansing, for clearing. Tobacco will cloak you. Right? And so, and I was a native guy, a Lakota guy that I did peyote with one time, and he was talking about tobacco, and he says, tobacco isn't what causes cancer, guys. He says, have you ever wondered why some people can sit and puff like a chimney and they live to be 110? And other people, smoke a couple cigarettes a day and they die of lung cancer when they're 25? Mm-hmm. He's like, it's because of what tobacco is, among other things, it's an amplifier. So native people traditionally use tobacco for a couple things. Number one, the peace pipe, right? What they would do actually is when they would come together in council, or when two people would meet, especially people from different tribes, before anybody spoke a fucking word, they would pull out the pipe, light it, smoke, and pass. And the reason for that was because their understanding of it was that tobacco will reveal if you're not telling the truth, right? In other words, there's consequences to not speaking truthfully once you've smoked tobacco, right? So that's the first thing that they use it for. They also use it for prayers because they believed that tobacco, so they would actually burn, either smoke it or burn it on as an incense to carry their prayers up to Creator, because they believe that, that tobacco would carry that. And the way this guy explained it is tobacco is an amplifier of your intention. Your intention, everything you think and say and speak is in some form of prayer. So if you are like energy in your body, in your energetic field, and you're amplifying it with tobacco, then it's going to eventually cause cancer or, something destructive. And if you are like the people who tend to live to be 110 and they're smoking their pipe every day are usually the people that are going out there and sitting down and, this is kind of exaggerated imagery, but kind of sitting on their porch with their pipe and enjoying a little smoke and just enjoying and appreciating the day. And that's the energy that they're putting out into the universe, and that's coming back to them, So, and this guy said, he said, I used to smoke cigarettes all the time. And he says, my grandmother told me you shouldn't use the tobacco that way. She says, in the morning when the sun comes up, go sit down, light up a cigarette. As the sun comes up, greet the sun, give thanks to Creator for all your blessings. When the sun goes down, she says, go out, light up another cigarette. Same thing, give thanks for a beautiful day, whatever. That's the kind of relationship you should have with tobacco. And when he did that, he said it totally changed his life and the way he related with it. So, I think you get to choose what your relationship is going to be, but there are consequences to those choices.
Yeah, I abused the hell out of it, and as a kid, and it was my escape. And now I have other things that are my escape, right? More positive for me. You know what I'm saying? You can't use it as an escape. And I mean, it's almost like the quick fix. You abuse anything, you need more of it. Alcohol, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Sex, like pornography. Yeah. Like you just have to have more and more, and extreme. The stuff you used to look at don't do it for you anymore. You need something else. And so anytime there's like a quick fix, man, it's never the way to go. And you got to work through your stuff on every level. And I think that's the main essence of even dealing with the plant medicines. Just work through your stuff. And there's a lot of things, a lot of people, a lot of spirits that will help you and want to help you and have your back. One last question for you, man, because I noticed on your website there's a lot of emphasis on the tribe aspect. And so we've kind of formed our tribe, and there's a quote, my vibe attracts my tribe. And so there's a lot of people who feel marginalized and like they're all alone. They don't have nobody that believe in similar things that they do, nobody to talk about their experiences or whatever. That's why I created the podcast, and that's why, like, outside of it, we have community. We have different apps on your phone where we're just connected with people, and it's beautiful. It helps a lot of people. How important is it for us to find a tribe or a community of people to grow with?
Oh man, this is a topic that is really near and dear to my heart, and part of that is because of the way I grew up. For all of the the negative aspects of my upbringing and the format. One of the things that we did have more than most people was we had a community. We had more of a sense of community, more of something that you belonged to. And that sense of belonging is, I think that's inherent in being human. It's part of, the way we evolved. I mean, wolves pack, lions pride, humans tribe. And we like to think that we have transcended our primitive origins. I think we have a very, call it a sweet home Alabama syndrome, right? Like the way we relate to ourselves and where we come from. It's like, oh my God, I was born in this podunk town in Alabama. Thank God I escaped from that and made it to New York. And I'm so above all of that shit. And I'm not, this hillbilly, and I changed my accent and everything. When the reality is for us to really go to the next level as human beings, whether we're talking individually or collectively, we get to go back to all the things that we've judged and made wrong. And we get to remember who we are and where we come from, and love those parts of ourselves. And I think that, especially now more than ever, when you look at the crises that we face, humanity is facing ecologically, spiritually, politically, economically, there's so many things that I think are coming together to create almost like a perfect storm. And I think that finding community, finding people that you can belong to, and finding a place on this earth that you belong to. Yeah. I think those things are critical. You talked earlier in the podcast, you said something about, going back to your childhood home and how those things are no longer, that longing that you have is more, it's more than just some sort of psychological, shit that you got to deal with.
You represented something.
Yeah. When you're a kid, like you knew every inch of your backyard. The land I grew up on, we had like 20 acres out near the mountains, and land I grew up on, like I knew every rock, every sagebrush. I knew where all the anthills were. I was connected to that land. Children are inherently indigenous, but we have this culture that really just chops you off at the root. And there's a lot of grief, unconscious grief, unprocessed grief that we have that's not being dealt with, not being processed, not being felt. And it's more important than we realize for us to start to reconnect back to those aspects of ourselves, to our tribe, to some place on the earth, and really reestablishing that connection. And I think tribe is, I think it's going to be actually an essential aspect of the way that humanity moves forward over the next 100 years, is starting to recover sort of what I would call tribe seeds.
Yeah, there's movements and scenes and things popping up that welcome people. I mean, and that's why, like, taking advantage of the technology, like the apps and things that connect us. And we use Discord. And so anybody needs a prayer, anybody needs just someone to talk to. Hello, hey, I'm not by my, even though I feel alone, I can jump in this app and you know what I'm saying? Get this stuff off my chest, or whatever the case is. I can talk to the local shaman. He's in Discord hanging out,
Yeah. And even besides everything, like what I just talked about, what you're talking about there also is I found that, and that's one of the reasons why I started putting more of an emphasis on tribe and communities, because I found, for me, first of all, when I went to Peru the first time, did ayahuasca, flipped my world upside down. It was the most profound experience of my life up to that point. And I came back to the little town in Germany where I was living, and there was nobody, like there was not a single soul that I could talk to that understood what was going on for me, what I was going through. I had nobody. Mm-hmm. And that was really hard. Like not even my wife, she wasn't
in community. You could still feel isolated, right?
Yeah. And so like when I finally did discover other people who were on a similar path as me, and discovering, it was like, oh my God, what a breath of fresh air. There's somebody I can bounce things off of. And I find that like a lot of people come for the transformation, but they tend to stick around for the community. Yeah. Because we're hungry for that. We need that.
That's interesting. So just because you have community doesn't mean that you're thriving in it or you're growing together. I mean, all religions exist as a form of community. The best way for like cult leaders is to get people is to welcome them in and tell them, hey, positive affirmations they've never heard. They've been called stupid their whole life, and now here's this charismatic person welcoming them into community. And just because
cults
there's people
feed on your
there,
natural need for community. Cults feed on that natural need.
Yep.
And really, like, people ask me all the time, like, well, what about cults and things like that? And for me, cultivate, culture, all this, these are root words, right? Common, and the difference between a cult and a culture is, in my perspective, quite simply the ability to think and choose for yourself.
there you go. Yeah.
Right. But they're not that much different. A cult is, we're afraid of, people talk about tribalism as if it's a negative thing. And there is a dark side to tribalism. It leads to feudalism. It leads to taking sides. It leads to, my people are better than your people. Yeah. Most native tribes, the meaning of the name that they gave themselves, almost every tribe called themselves the people, right? And then the names that they gave other tribes. So when the Europeans came in, like we call them the Iroquois Nation. Well, they call themselves the Haudenosaunee. That's their name for themselves, the people, right? We call them Iroquois, which was an Algonquin word. The Algonquins gave to the Iroquois because they were their enemies, and it was like an insult, right? Sioux, the Lakota, they call themselves Lakota, but the other tribes called them Sioux, which was an insult. Navajo, they call themselves the Dene, but Navajo was an insult. So it's like there is this aspect of tribalism where it's like we're the people and everybody else is snakes in the grass, right? Yeah. But I think that rather than just dismissing tribalism offhand, in one swipe, because of those negative aspects and because of the way that sometimes we tend to get into a very narrow way of seeing things, there are ways to offset that. Create your community, create your tribe, and then create tribal exchange programs, where you go out and you spend a couple of years when you come of age living with another community and trying on different points of view. And you go on a walkabout and you come back to your community with, years of different perspectives that augment and expand. Like that's just one idea. There's a lot of ways that we could address this thing, but rather than just saying tribalism is bad and it leads to cult mentality and all that shit, let's look at the positive aspects of that and see, because I think that a big part of what is missing in the world today, we're going to find those things to argue about. We're going to go pick camps of Democrats and Republicans and pro this and anti that.
What to think
anyway?
Yeah.
Right. So rather than go, okay, let's be globalists and remove ourselves from that community and that thing that gives us a sense of belonging, we're hungry for that. We're craving that. We miss that. Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's like growing up without a dad. Even if you never knew your dad, there's still a missing for you. When you look at other people who have dads, you're like, the same thing is there for us with tribe. Mm-hmm. There's a missing for us.
Yeah.
We're just not conscious to it.
Yeah, man. I almost wanted to do a documentary on this or something, but just to show people, like, looking at, as far as culture is concerned, looking at like middle America, like the white suburban family, how disconnected they are from their neighbors and from their neighborhood or whatever. Looking at that, and even around here or whatever, it's kind of the same thing. Like, I know who they are, but it's not community. But I come from the trailer park. I come from the little hole in the wall trailer park where you'd walk around and everybody knew each other, and you'd knock on somebody's door if you needed bread or milk or whatever the case is. And there was, even though you wasn't like this, it was still a community. You interacted with those people who live, around the corner or whatever the case is. Looking at that, that's where I come from. And then I grew up on the reservation of the Porch Creek Indians in Porch, Alabama. I lived on the reservation for several years in the community, and we had different housing projects is what they would call them, but they were on the reservation, and we would go to each one, and all the kids would hang out, and the families knew each other and stuff. And so now, like the only glimpse I really get into that as far as what I've created, and I have that longing for that. So I created with technology, with the people around me that I can do get-togethers, periodically or whatever, create it that way, versus only experiencing it for Christmas and Thanksgiving, and you've come together with family and you travel and you're there with each other, versus like that being something that's always there. Like if we look at the Mexican people, the Spanish people, like even here in America, whether they're working or they have a goal together, like there's trailers with like 25 Mexican people living in the trailer, and they all pay $25 a month because they all come together, pull their money, live together. That's their community. They drink, they work, they do their thing, and that's how they operate. But they are a community. They're functioning and it's working for them. They're building money, sending money home, spending money here, but always got nice vehicles. Like that's a community. Their grandmother usually lives with them, right? Versus your grandmother's in a home down the road. Your grandmother lives with you, and the family would live together. And then being like really big into hip hop as a kid and obsessed with Black culture, like I was really like we would walk through the hood for fun, because it was like I got to kind of see what it looked like inside the projects, like a movie I would watch. I would watch gangster movies and be obsessed with that and obsessed with the music, but I literally can go there and see the community that if you have one person on the corner having a cookout, everybody's invited. And they're drinking, they're playing dominoes, they're telling stories. They still have that community versus the suburban white family who just has them and their family on Christmas and Easter or Thanksgiving or whatever the case is. I would like to even do a documentary just to show people. I mean, obviously, if we look at it, we can see if we zoom in, but it is a huge disconnect when it comes to suburban white families or whatever the case is. It's something that's been lost. And that same way with thinking about my childhood friends and childhood homes, and that doesn't exist anymore. I get this weird feeling when I drive past trailer parks now. I look at a trailer park and like, man, I miss the trailer park. I miss the community, man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. The land that I grew up on eventually got turned into neighborhoods over the last 10 years. Like, it was raw land, and then now it's all curb and gutter and lawns and McMansions, and there's a real sadness for me.
See trees being cut down.
Just a loss of that connection to that land. And also, you talk about the community. I mean, I lived in Costa Rica for almost a year, and then I lived in Germany in that small town that my wife is from for a number of years, 4 years one time, 6 years another time. So the community in Costa Rica that I lived in, this was back in 2009, 2010. It was most of Costa Rica is very touristy and full of tourist attractions, but there's one area down there in the area called Pérez Celedón, and it's kind of secluded from the mountain ranges, kind of cut it off from the rest of Costa Rica. So unless you have a really good reason to go there's not a lot of tourists, but it's a very agricultural area. So I was living in this neighborhood, in this community where, it was cane sugar. So there's like this harvest season. And when it's harvest season, money's flowing, people are at the cantina, everybody's drinking and having a good time, and money's flowing around. The rest of the year, money's really tight. In fact, it's so tight that you go down to the little bodega, the little store that they have. They call them pulperias. And they would, you can buy cigarettes one at a time. They open up a pack of flour and repackage it into little single serve things because you can't afford to buy the whole pack of flour. Right. And that community, and also Costa Rica did not have their infrastructure set up. So there was no cell phone service. There's none of that stuff. And there was a real community there. Like the downside of that was, it was gossip central. Like everybody talked about everybody. If I took shit, the whole town knew about it 10 minutes later. But especially because I was a gringo, everybody was talking about me all the time. They were making up shit about me that wasn't even true. But the flip side of that was like people were there for each other in a really real way. And everybody, that you didn't just walk into the pulperia and go grab your stuff and go. You went in and you were greeting everybody and greeting with handshakes and a kiss on the cheek and stopping and having a conversation. And that was what was important.
Yeah. You know? It still happens, man, in some of those. I don't know if it's still in that neighborhood, but like you get a glimpse of it. If you've been removed, you go in the store and there's people talking to everybody, and it makes you feel weird because you're not connected like that anymore. And there's probably just random people having a conversation. Some people panic. I do sometimes. You have this stranger trying to hold a conversation. You're like, oh wait, hold on. I don't.
We're not used to that kind of intimacy.
Yeah.
You know, and they say good fences make good neighbors. And I say, I don't know about that. I think good fences make it so you don't have to deal with your shit. Good fences make it so you don't have to deal with the discomfort of being intimate and close with somebody, or having to open up and share, or having to deal with, the shadow, your own shadow, which is going to come up if you interact with somebody over an extended period of time. Is guaranteed,
Super powerful, man. Let me ask you this too, just in closing, because you do these retreats and stuff, and so you deal with a lot of entrepreneurs, right? And helping them, people who are already successful. Is there a reason for that, or and I'm wondering, is it because of cost? Like someone who isn't successful might not be able to pay or afford a trip like that because they could be kind of pricey, or is there a certain way of just helping people connect who are already established? How does that work for you in the pursuit?
So Entheopreneur is something that that's kind of the direction that it evolved for me. Like those were the kind of people that started coming to me. Like I worked with somebody and he went home and brought his friend, and like there was just like this door that opened and these people started coming from that realm. And it was like, this is kind of a niche that sort of created itself. But we actually have done ceremonies, and we did those actually for a very long time. We did a pay what you can sort of format, because I feel like, and we still offer those from time to time. I feel like it's really important to acknowledge, the gift that I received, that we can receive from these plants is priceless.
Yeah. Money. There's no money that can, buy that really,
Yeah. The priceless nature of that gets to be acknowledged. And in fact, for me, I had to, it was a really challenging, thing for me to navigate and figure out, because for a long time, like I was out there doing medicine ceremonies, and I was struggling to get by. I couldn't feed my family, but I was just doing it like I was doing pay what you can. I was in it's a really typical healer mentality. Like I got to go out and I got to heal the world and save the world, and
but your family's
at my own expense and my family's expense and everything else.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I had some health crises and some things that sort of kicked my ass that made me look at it and go, my body was literally, when I looked at the messages of the body, it was literally, look, you have an overdeveloped sense of responsibility to community and cosmos at the expense of yourself. So I have my daughter's trying to get my attention.
Oh, good, man. You've been on here long enough. Go ahead and plug your links, man. If somebody wants to go on the excursion with you and they want to look into it, your website and all that good stuff. Go ahead and plug your stuff real quick before we go here.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So the website, if you want to check that out, is www.entheopreneur.com. So that's ENTHEOPRENEUR. Entheopreneur.com. And you just check that out. There's a place there where you can click join our next adventure, and you can submit your information, and then we get in touch with you and we go from there. And other than that, you can find me on Facebook. I've really actually haven't been on Facebook that much these days, but usually Facebook or Instagram is a great way to find me. And thank you so much.
Yeah,
Derek,
I enjoyed it,
thank
man.
you for,
This
it was
was
a
a
great
really, really
conversation.
good conversation, the beginning and the end, man. Just both sides, the tribe and the plant medicines, man. We really went into some good information. So I enjoyed it, man. We'll have to do it again sometime soon, brother. Thank you so much for coming on.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
All right, brother.
Have a good
Bless.
one. All right.
Later. Levi Darger, ladies and gentlemen, and his daughter there at the end. Good stuff. This was like a masterclass. This was like a plant medicine masterclass. And that may be what I call this episode, the plant medicine masterclass. Good stuff. We went in on a lot of good stuff, and especially with the tribe thing. The tribe comes in, it's big too. You know, finding those people that you can resonate with, finding your family, you know, those people who your ride or die people in your community. One thing we mentioned, I was talking about death a little bit, and I've brought that notion up as well. Sometimes I deal with it, man, you know, just being honest. And sometimes I just had to go to the scriptures and see what the scripture says about death and being absent from the body is present with the Lord, and how he has prepared mansions, and have this understanding of death, just because, man, just the beauty of this life. Even if you get a mansion, like, the mansion's cool. It's not my trailer. It's not my trailer park. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's, man, this life is so beautiful. I don't want to get sentimental on you guys, but the chat, you know, everybody, I'm looking at the chat, and I know you guys from different places, and we have different experiences together, and I enjoy your company. I enjoy your conversations. I enjoy your family, you know, and then for that not to exist, I mean, that happens. Some people, you know, only walk with you so far, and they leave, and you'll never hear from them again. Even that, like yesterday, man, it comes in waves for me, man, you know, but it's real. It's authentic. You know, so everything you do has a last time, and sometimes you don't know it. And I'm thinking, let me just be open and honest, man. And Adam, you're in the comment. I don't know. Like, I guess I'm afraid of death. You know, I don't want to die. I'm enjoying this. There's always a last time. And I've seen a meme. At one point, you and your friends went outside to play for the last time, but none of you knew it. It was the last time. You didn't know it. And I'm thinking, like, you know, just the little things, man, are so beautiful, especially when you've been so deep your whole life. It's the little things, and you see the beauty and see God in everything. And yesterday I was just thinking, like, asking my daughter, like, we've been doing the daddy-daughter dance every year, probably the last 4 years now, and it's beautiful to go dance with your daughter. My daughter's growing up. She's like taller than me now. So I'm going to have to look up to her, you know, dancing, you know, all this little stuff. It's like, and I asked her, because I'm like, well, maybe she don't want to go. Maybe she's getting too old. Maybe I don't want to go. Like, I'm trying to, you know, rationalize everything. Then I asked her on the way home, like, I'm thinking about it, like, do you want to go this year? Because it's coming up. You want to go to the daddy-daughter dance? She's like, sure. Yeah. But then part of me was like, you got to go. Because you never know what's going to be the last time you went. Like, when was the last daddy-daughter dance? Well, when she was 14, 11, 10, whatever, when you stop doing it. Some dads don't even do, it's not important to them. They don't even ask their kids if they want to go to something like that, you know, maybe whatever it is. But it's just always like a last time you did something, man. When's the last time you did it? But you don't know it doing it. You just carry on. Then you look up, and then years have passed by. It was the last time you talked to somebody. I got a bunch of friends. Like, when I hung up the phone with you, I didn't know it was going to be 3 years when, you know, and not talking to you, not out of anger or hurt or whatever. It's just life. Time is something else. Time will have its way with you. There's just always this lyric from Blindside, the band. It's a lyric that says, "Time will change your heart, but I'll be waiting at the doorsteps with love." Time has a way of dealing with people, hard-hearted people. Time can harden your heart. Time can break your heart. And I look at stability. It's big to me, man. It's big to me. As someone who's coming up who didn't have a lot of stability, now I need it. We need it. You know, I didn't have a dad consistent in my life. There were mom's boyfriends coming in for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 months. We'd move in with them for a week. We'd move out. We was moving all the time. We'd go to a school. We'd pack up and go to another school because we moved to a new district with a new boyfriend. There's new people. There was no stability. I demand stability. I need it. I require it. I know how important it is to my family, to you guys. We need stability in our lives, and not just to be blown around by just whatever circumstances are, or whatever people's opinions are, or whatever the case is, or their triggers are, to really be able to stand for what you believe in, and have comfort in who you are, in your future. You know what I'm saying? All of this stuff, it makes sense to me now. And it's, I don't want to make you guys feel bad. I hope I'm not trying to like articulate it so that you get what I'm saying when it comes to this stuff. But I appreciate the little things, man. I appreciate the little things in life. And I approach everything with an attitude of gratitude. But doing that has maybe sent me in this sentimental state that I'm so sensitive. Maybe it's just a certain time period. Maybe it's a state of being that only lasts for a little while, but being appreciative of it. I'm appreciative. I know this sounds crazy. I'm appreciative of the taste of chocolate. Why? Well, just think of that when you pass, there was going to be a time that was the last time you ate chocolate, you know? The last time you watched a good movie, the last time you were scared, the last time you held your lover in your arms. There's going to be a last time. There's going to be a last time you kiss your kid. You tell your kid you love them. Like all of this, man. There's going to be a last time for it all. I cherish every moment with everyone. I try to make people laugh when I'm in their company. I try to ease their burden. I try to listen. I try to find ways that I can help, you know, and make their experience a little bit more pleasing, a little bit more easier. There's a last time for everything. And if you think about it, maybe it will freak you out. Maybe because I'm just so sensitive, it just freaks me out at times, man. Allie Graham says, brother, by the time we all take our final breath, I think we'll all be ready. And the reward of this journey will continue, a new one. That's a fear. Let's address that, you know, of being ready. That's scary. I can't lie to you. I picked up a dude the other day, man, and this made me think about it. Maybe this triggered it. Let's just say this. I went to the ATM. And let me just set the story up. Maybe. I gave somebody the last $20 that we had in the car. Like it was $20 in the car, and there was a family with a sign at Walmart saying, you know, need gas money or food. I didn't have the chance to read the whole thing. I just knew they were in need, and I knew there was a $20 bill there. Passed them up. I gave it to them. My wife needs cash for school and stuff with my daughter and stuff like that. So I was like, you know what? I need to go replace. That's my wife's. I didn't put that $20 bill there, even though I gave it away, you know. So I was like, let me go to the ATM, get $20 and put it back in. So my wife gets in and needs it. It's not there, you know. So I went to the ATM and I went and got $20 out. And I seen this black dude across the street. He's, you know, I don't know how to explain him. He's like I don't want to, you know, profile and say like a thug, but he looked like, I mean, he's just a black dude. I don't know. And that's something too. You see a random black guy walking down the street, you know, and I seen him. He was across the street, and I'm at the ATM, and I turn around, and he's 4 feet away from me, in between me and my car, and I'm just come from the ATM, and he says, hey, bro, I need a ride. I could have just got $20,000 of cash out. I could have got 1,000, 100. And the dude, maybe this is what he does. Maybe he walks up and down the road and waits for people to go to the ATM. Like, and it just took me by surprise. I'm like, damn, I got money in my pocket. It's only $20, you know, but he don't know that. He said, hey man, I need a ride. I'm trying to get a job and so. He said, man, I ain't on no bullshit, man. I ain't on no bullshit. I'm trying to get a job and I just went for my interview. I just need a ride around the corner. He's like, trust me, man, I ain't on no bullshit. I'm just thinking like, I said, bro, I don't know, man. Sorry, man. Just let's go. Get in the car. And I roll the windows down. Okay. Make sure you ain't gonna lock me in my car or just pull a pistol out or whatever. You know, it's reality. I judge every situation like that. I try my best to like be aware of my surroundings. If danger happens, I can protect my family or protect myself or my friends. If danger happens, like crazy, like that's a weird thing too. Even though, you know, I position myself in a certain way. That's just how I was raised, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, I was nervous, man, you know, and I couldn't help but think of what if this dude pulls a pistol out, you know, in the car with me, some random guy. You know, I told my wife and she freaked out. Anyway, I took him where he needed to be and asked me where, you know, I thought he can get a job and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, that could have been my last car ride. That could have been my last time at the ATM. Therefore, that being said, Allie, you say that I think the time we all breathe our last breath will be ready. I don't know. I'm not going to be ready. I don't think I'll ever be ready. Some people, and this is crazy, y'all. Some people go to the grave kicking and screaming, freaking out. They don't want to leave. I don't want to leave. I don't want it to be the last time. I don't want to kiss my wife for the last time. It's inevitable. Is it? Maybe we'll carry on the other side. But being ready. My wife was just expecting me to go to the store. Would she have been ready if I didn't return home because I got shot, you know? Or you get in your car to go, you know, God forbid, pick your daughter up from school and you get in a wreck and where's Dad? He never showed up. Was she ready when we got out, when I dropped her off this morning? Told her I love her. That, you know, was the last time. And this is cryptic or whatever, but it's reality, you know? You don't know when the last time is. I don't think anybody's ready for the last. We can't, and I say that because we can't prepare for our deaths. Like we'd like to. I live life like I'm prepared. I try to live life with that much gratitude and thanksgiving and walking in the spirit and trying to be open and honest and helping people. Like I try to stay prepared that way. And so every minute that I have now is a blessing. I should have been dead a long time ago. I should have been dead. So every minute on this side of eternity, those near-death experiences change people for a reason. They thought it was over. Those psilocybin encounters, those mushroom encounters, they changed people for a reason. But did you die? I thought you were. And I'm telling you, it's the little things. The little things. I don't want it to be the last time, man. I don't. I'm sorry. I don't know if that's weak or I'm afraid to die. I'm not. No, you're not going to get it. You don't get to, you know, this is it. I enjoy my life. I can say if you're depressed and you just look at life like it sucks and you don't care, you're just in a situation you want to change. Yeah, take me out. Let me try it again. It's got to be better on the other side. I'm in a realm of everything put together. I really enjoy life. All of it. All of it. The good. I've moved myself into a psychological position where I enjoy the bad stuff. I enjoy my dirt. I enjoy learning from. I enjoy my demons. I enjoy learning from them. I thank God that he sent them to teach me. I enjoy the demons. I enjoy it all. This existence, because there's going to be a realm where those demons ain't going to exist. Those angels aren't going to exist. They're not even in the picture anymore. You're in another realm. It's not this realm. Again, a fear. What if it's not as good as this realm? What if it's not as good? We're going to find out. We will find out. That's for sure. It's inevitable. Let me just tie this into the whole death is inevitable thing. There's a friend of mine who takes offense to that. He does not believe that. Illuminati Congo does not accept physical death. He believes in physical immortality, that you can live forever. And the only way that you die is because you've accepted it. You've been told that, hey, there comes a time when you get this age and your body and your body will deteriorate. You've accepted it. You believe it. So you die. He's on this weird kick that you do not die. Physical death. Maybe looking at some of the yogis and some of the people who have lived life of meditation and they've preserved their bodies and ascended into rainbow body and all of these different things that you get to live forever, a physical mortality. So he's in that. You know, what if that means being on earth the whole time or continuing? I don't know his belief, but he believes that it's a choice to die. And I'm reminded of him believing that because yesterday, my family, they bought me a DVD set of a television show from the 80s called Tales from the Dark Side, and it's just a bunch of short stories, like short. It's a TV series, but they're all just different or whatever, like Twilight Zone or something. So we've been watching that together as a family. So one we watched yesterday, it's pretty cool. The guy comes on, and it's a family sitting around a table. It's a mom and a son, and Grandpa just died, and they're eating like, oh, we're gonna miss him, man. He was a good man, and blah blah blah. It's about Grandpa. Grandpa comes walking down the stairs, and he looks a little. They got a bunch of makeup on him. He looks a little old or whatever. He sits down with them. What are you looking at? I want my breakfast. They're like, Grandpa, what are you doing here? You died. I didn't die. Grandpa, you died last night. No, I didn't. Don't tell me that. Are you a ghost? Grandpa, what are you, an apparition? I'm me. And he's there eating breakfast with them. And they're freaking out like, Grandpa, you're dead. I'm not dead. Y'all want me to be dead, but I'm not dead. I'm not dead yet. I would know it if I was dead. They're eating breakfast. They're like, what? How was Grandpa, here with us? He died last night. So they're trying to convince Grandpa that he's dead. The pastor comes over, the preacher, the next day, or just maybe it was a couple hours later. And the preacher comes there and he's talking with Grandpa. But by this time, a few hours have passed. Grandpa's starting to deteriorate a little bit. He's starting to, his skin's looking a little bit more saggy and droopy and bags under the eyes, and he's changing color. His hair is falling out a little bit. And the preacher's like, Grandpa so-and-so, you died last night and you're just stubborn. You won't believe it. He's like, no, I don't believe it. I didn't die. Why are y'all telling me? Y'all want me to die, and I'm alive as I've ever been. And he's there. He can claim himself. It's really Grandpa, but he's deteriorating. And everybody's trying to tell him he's dead, but he won't believe it. He's like, nope, I'm not dead. That's a whole realm of thinking about ghosts and spirits that are trapped on this plane of existence and they don't know they've died. Like the Sixth Sense, the movie Sixth Sense, he didn't know that he died. Spoiler alert. If you haven't seen it yet, but still watch it. It's a great movie. Spirits that don't know that they've died, and you can help them cross over by like, hey, it's okay. It's okay. Hopefully I won't be one of them. I don't want to die. I want to stay here, that I'm just going to linger. I'm just feel a connection with you people. I'm going to be with y'all, who knows? But, and then it progresses where the next, hours later or the next day, whatever, they're having dinner with, the kid goes to see a fortune teller to try to see if she can help him with Grandpa crossing over. And she's like, oh, I knew you, Grandpa, blah, 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 blah. And she gives him this elixir or whatever. Anyway, Goes back home. Grandpa's like looking bad. He looks like a Walking Dead. He looks better than a Walking Dead zombie. And this was back in the 80s as far as like the makeup and the costume and stuff. He looks like a zombie. They're sitting there eating, and she gave him this handkerchief with this special powder in it, and he showed it to his mom and said, "This is what she gave me to give to him." You've been fooled. That fortune teller was a fraud. That's just black pepper. That's just black pepper. No, she said it was a special elixir. Gave it to Grandpa. Grandpa takes he has to wipe his face or something, and he gives him the handkerchief. He opens it up. He's like, "What's this in here?" And it's all the black. It's literally black pepper. He goes to sneeze. Achoo! Into the napkin, and his nose comes off, and he looks in it. He says, "Okay, I guess I really am dead." He just stands up and like walks back upstairs, and it ends, and you can see the nose is. Anyway, it's just all these short stories, and it just reminded me, watching that, Illuminati Congo, the only way you die is if you believe that you die. You can live forever. You have. The whole thing with Christ, man, he has defeated death. He has given you everlasting life. Like, those are the hopes that we have in Christ. Like, we're going to live forever. We're going to be conscious of eternity. It's going to be something beautiful. You have everlasting life. It lasts forever. Very, very interesting. Just to look at all of these different angles and see how it fits in. But life is precious. Life is short. There's a lie. I believe it's a lie. The whole past life regression and what were you in a second life and what are you going to be when you leave here. I have friends who struggle with depression. I have friends who struggle with suicide, who entertain the idea of suicide. When I was a depressed teenager, I fantasized about how I would kill myself and all of these different things, right? I have friends who do that now, and it bothers me. And with the whole reincarnation and past life thing comes into play, they just feel like it's a choice, and they just get to do it again. Like, yep, it's I did my best, but I'm gonna go ahead and end it. And there's memes. I've been seeing people post memes about suicide. And now, like, almost like suicide is an option or a joke. There's a meme of this baby who was just born, and he's looking at the camera, and he looks mad. There's a little newborn baby in the operating room, giving birth. And he's looking mad, and the meme says, when you commit suicide but then reincarnate 5 minutes later, he's all mad looking. I wanted to leave here. And everybody's laughing, making jokes, and sharing it. Like, suicide's not funny, man. Death isn't funny. It's inevitable. I wouldn't say it's funny. So it just begins to be this thing where you get to try again. I don't know that you do. And I don't think any of us do. No, we can entertain the idea. We can get into past life suggestions versus a regression, a suggested memory, implanted memory. And something we discussed in the School of the Mystics the other night. I think it was Adam Starseed here in the chat, but he mentioned the fact that all of these type of regressions that you're getting, these past lives, what if it's just you're tapping into your DNA and you're tapping into your ancestral line? It's not you were a king in Egypt. What if your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was? What if what if it wasn't you who was a fortune teller in Lemuria? What if someone in your ancestral line was, and you're tapping into that DNA, and those memories are coming back that way? What if that's what's happening? I personally would give that a little bit more credence than I would the fact that you have these multiple lives, and once you get here, you finish this one, you get another chance to get it right, or you didn't ascend, and so you can just keep repeating it over and over, like stuck in a loop until you make the right decisions or whatever. In other lives, you better get it right this life. Don't try. Like, don't even, like, why not? Like, get it right this life. That's what, if you are conscious that you can get it right, do it. We're all on a level playing field. Well, Gandhi, he's one who's ascended. Okay. Or you're conscious that there is an ascension. You're conscious that you could be Gandhi. You can overcome your trials and your tribulations, and you can respond with peace and grace to those situations. Then do it. That's the alchemical process. You're aware of it. Good. I mean, look at the Matrix. People, they're not even aware that they're asleep. You're aware that you are woke, and you're aware that there is a such thing as ascension in people, and there's levels to this. Then make the decisions. Ascend. Don't be bound. Don't be held back. Ascend. Whatever it is, and whatever that means, be the best person that you can be. Be the best you that you can be. Without regrets, without second guessing who you are, your calling. Ali in the chat says, I'm with that, with the blood remembrance 100. The Bible says that the life is in the blood. The life is in the blood. The blood remembrance, DNA. Homesaw says, once we wake up, you will be surprised we have more work to do. You'll be one of the ones that keeps on going. Yes, death is a choice. That song, Tim McGraw, Live Like You're Dying. You don't know. You're not promised tomorrow. It's not to scare you, but it's like, make the best of every situation. There's going to be a time when it's the last time you held your wife, the last time you kissed your daughter, the last time or let's flip it, the last time you cussed somebody out, the last time that you smoked crack. You know what I'm saying? All the bad stuff. The last time you robbed somebody, the last time you beat your wife, the last time that you stole. Like, obviously, in this life, like I have last times for a lot of that stuff. Not smoking crack, but the last time I smoked weed, the last time I did this and did that. So I have a place to go to, but get it right. Let it be the last time you did something beautiful. The last time you paid for a random person's bill at the restaurant. The last time you helped an old lady across the road. The last time you went and visited the homeless. Do you remember? Or in the chat, Allie, the last time you cut homeless people's hair. Allie used to set up at events and give homeless people haircuts. She cut 50 people's hair in a day, giving homeless people haircuts, tightening them up. It was, it's been some years. There was a last time you did that. Not to grieve, make you grieve over it. Maybe it's for good reason. There's new things that come from that. But literally, there was a last time, man. There was a last time. So shout out to all the new listeners that we have every time. And it's we just got somebody here in chats. Green and White Jamie says this channel must be good because I've seen Jordan Maxwell on here a few times. Yeah. Every time we do a Jordan Maxwell interview, and maybe that's the reason I do the Jordan Maxwell interviews, is because it helps me kind of get out there to a wider audience. He has a huge fan base. So welcome, Jamie. There's a lot of more interesting guests and some more interesting topics that we cover as well. So yeah, welcome to the fold. Jamie said that they have liked and subscribed because of the Jordan Maxwell interviews. There you go. It's working. Networking is working. The net is working. The web, the net. Come on now. We're talking about the etymology of words. Somebody else was going in on some words a while ago. Okay, it was Adam Starseed who said, how we talking about cult is, you have the word cult and culture and agriculture, and all this stuff. And he said, well, what about the word occult? The word cult coming, is in occult as well. So kind of interesting. Homesaw says, or you can exist twice or thrice. You're limited. How do you know which one you're on? Even that though, even like getting another chance at this life, like I feel like you'll forget everything. I'll forget my wife. I'll forget my daughter. I'll forget who Home Sauce is. I'll forget the love I have from my friends here that I've built with. Like, I don't want to forget, man. So maybe in eternity, I get to remember what I did on earth. Like earth was a testing ground. Maybe our spirits get to commune in the afterlife. I'd rather that than forget about all of this. You know? Who knows, man? I don't think any of us do. We have glimpses, and even Levi speaking about all of these different psilocybin and ayahuasca and iboga and salvia and all these different, plant teachers and medicines. He don't know what it is, but it's something. Something's there. Those ghosts, they're here for a reason. Whether they're just like I've talked about loops playing over and over. A lot of time ghosts and stuff you see like as people who have died traumatically or died instantly and don't know they're dead, or like it was so traumatic that it burnt an imprint of or a recording of the way that they died that just plays on loop. I mean, a lot of time people hanging themselves or somebody, it's always something scary usually, My wife went to New Orleans on a ghost tour, and they were saying that this woman was pushed off of a ledge or died or whatever at this particular house. My wife claims that she's seen this girl jump off of off of this building, and she's seen it happen. And the guy was explaining it happening another way, and she's like, I feel like I just seen this happen, and it's almost like a loop or a recording that's stuck. Dumbledore says, what do you think about reptilian possession? I don't know about reptilian possession. I mean, but, demonic possession, maybe that's what you're talking about, the same thing, or just, terminology or whatever. But yeah, possession, man, depression, who are those entities? What are they? Or do they only exist in this realm, or is there just a dimension that you cross over to? When we cross over, do we stay on Earth and just live in another density? Our spirits just kind of leave this body and move on to a higher density, and we're still here operating, watching over, helping, ancestral spirits, guarding over your ancestral line, wanting to make contact, wanting to help, hoping for the best. The Bible talks about the great cloud of witnesses that are watching over us. Jesus had interactions with them. He would go upon the mountains and they would appear to him. His predecessors, they would physically appear and show up and communicate with him. Something happens. Something's there. There is a hope, right? That we get to continue this life. And, maybe they look the same. Maybe it really was their spirits. And maybe that's what happens to us. We talked about it in the School of Mystics again last week where, maybe they are ascended masters. And those who have ascended and kind of completed their karmic cycle, if you will, then they get to kind of claim their self in the spirit realm and come back and forth and deal with people as teachers, We're talking about possession. You have ascended masters who are teachers who have access to you from the other side, from the grave. You can contact them. They can contact you. These are ascended masters. What about the pedophiles? What about the pedophile that died in your house? Does he have the ability to contact you in your sleep? What about the incubus? What about the succubus? Do they have power to contact you in your sleep, to mess with you? Just because you've crossed over, just because someone's died, doesn't mean you were a good person on the other side. It doesn't mean you were a good person just because you've ascended. You live there now. I mean, even old people, man, we look at old people as something tender and, oh, look at this grandmother, look at her. These old people, like some of these old people were, boy, they did some stuff in their life, but now that they're old and feeble and they can't care for themselves, now they're cute or they're respectable or they are elder. Just because you're old don't mean you have wisdom. And on the other hand, little kids are going to be old people one day too. Little babies and stuff. Like the innocence is going to be, taken, man. That's weird. When was the time your innocence was stolen? Some of y'all can go back to the moment when this happened to me. When that happened to me, and then this, and then when I seen this, and it all, I was different. I was changed when that happened. And that may seem negative. Let's flip it. What about the good things? When you came into faith, when you had an psilocybin encounter, when you met Christ, whatever, you have those, and you have those moments too, where you get a fresh start. You get a reset button. You get to push the reset button. Start over. Born again. Can a man be born again? You cannot enter heaven unless you're born again. You have to be born again. You have those times where things are renewed. So, man, life is a trip. It's a beautiful experience if we let it be. You know, you can go back and look at yourself years ago and how you interpreted things and how you looked at life and viewed others, viewed your parents, viewed God, viewed the church or whatever. And now maybe through wisdom, you're able to kind of step back. And that's what God does. That's what psilocybin does. That's what Jesus does. You're able to kind of step back and just kind of reevaluate things with almost like not having a dog in the fight. Because we're talking about like going through, and there is a loving, blissful entity almost that's guiding you through life or through the psilocybin encounters or whatever. You feel like you're connected with God or angels that are kind of showing you, giving you that what is that? Timmy Turner, whatever. The you know what I'm saying, little Timmy and Scrooge or whatever, where the spirits visited him and showed him like what might have been or what could have been or what you caused, and therefore you get to kind of make the changes based off of the vision that you've seen or the information that you received, and so you're able to kind of apply that to your life and make the best out of it. I encourage you to do that. Make the best of every day. So, Dumbledore says, I have faint memories of being on a higher plane here on Earth and using living things as sustenance, like food for spirits. Could have been just a dream. Man, when you achieve, Tiny Tim, Timmy Turner, he was wishing for a burner. When you achieve higher states of consciousness, man, through meditation, you experience like that. Information is slippery. Information is slippery. You can hold on to stuff, grab something. You know, it's almost like if you're like, you know, those things at the mall, and they used to have game shows like this where like the wind's blowing. Well, some of them, they would have money in there, and the wind's blowing money everywhere, and you're just trying to, and like whatever you grab, you get to keep. And you're trying to grab dollars, $10, you're holding it to your chest, you like put it in your pockets, and you got to hold it, and then they turn it off, and when it opens up, everything that you held on to, you get to keep. The psychedelic realm works just like that. The dream state, receiving visions in your dreams, not even on psychedelics. I mean, that's the biggest, blast of DMT you're going to get is in your dream state. When you go to sleep, your third eye, your brain releases DMT that lulls you into the dream state to receive visions. And this is how God, at least if we believe the Bible, this is how God speaks to us in the wee visions of the night. And you get to grab some of it. You can train yourself, lucid dreaming. Train yourself on how to grab the vision, grab the principle, grab that face. Who is this? I seen that same person in my dream. Let me go talk to him, just introduce myself. I don't know if anything's going to come of it. It's a synchronicity. I played those numbers. Try it. See what happens. But just grab on, because it's so slippery. And you get to come out and say, okay, I got this, 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 and this. Okay. But even if you get one thing per night, per week, per month, per year, you're able to grab something out of the dream state. That something or someone is trying to communicate with you. God, your angels, your higher self, trying to communicate with you. All right, I got it. I'm going to try it. Hey, try this. Okay. Don't do it. Okay. Have those dreams where you were like contemplating doing something stupid and you had a nightmare. Oh, not doing that. I got to feel the grief of what it feels like if I do that. That's a big, Jesus, we can go on for hours. We're right at 3 hours now. I can just keep going. Those are scary because you feel you have those dreams where like you feel like you did something and you can't turn back from, whether you die in your dream or you're being chased by monsters, or I mean, I would have nightmares of me hurting someone, killing somebody, and then I'm on the run from the law with my family. I'm like, oh, we can't get caught now. You know, I'm going to jail forever. You know, and I feel like it's real. You know, and I'm like, damn, and I'm like panicking in my dream, like, damn, I can't let them get me, like, you know, and just running and running and running. You wake up like, damn, that was a dream. I'm glad that was a dream. So. But I got to see what it felt like. That even crosses into the psychedelic experience where, what if you're not really talking to elves? What if you're not meeting angels? What if it's your mind playing tricks on you? What if you created this realm in these people, in these little beings, and whoever you're communicating, the golden teachers, True Seeker? What if you're just speaking to your own conscious? And you already knew this stuff, and because I wanted it. I wanted an encounter. What if I created the encounter for myself, and then when I tapped in, I just got what I was looking for? I mean, what if this reality is that we signed agreements to come here? Okay, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna do it. And I know what it's gonna help me in the end. It's gonna produce something beautiful in me. All the stuff that I'm going through, it's going to produce something beautiful, and I'm ready to do it. And you sign up to come do life, and you already know you've created it. The simulation theories, as some would say, you just living out a program simulation that you created. You created it. So the entities, the angels, the elves, the aliens, whoever they are you're communicating with in these other realms, what if they're not real? What if you created them and they're speaking to you and you're responding back to them? Like, you already know what they're going to tell you. You know what I'm saying? And you had this conversation. But when you come back, you catch your breath. The next day, you reevaluate whether they were real or whether they weren't. You still respond like they were. And you live your life accordingly. Did you just meet the tree elves who live in the trees and hide under the mushrooms? Did you meet them in that dream realm, in that psilocybin encounter? You don't know. I don't think any of us know. It's slippery. But you live your life in such a way that you did. And just kind of end out on a little softer note with that. There was a couple interviews that we did, and I've talked about this, but me and my buddy Drew Gower, shout out to Drew, we would do voices and impersonations and stuff. And he impersonates Lou Engle, which is a Christian minister who has an event that he puts on called The Call, where they fill up stadiums to come together for prayer. And if they can get enough people praying, then they can end abortion. If they get 30,000 people praying for the same thing at the same space. And they do this every year to make a lot of money. Tickets are pretty expensive. So anyway, Drew is really good at impersonating Lou Engle. And the little guy who was on my show from the Jesus Camp documentary about 2 years ago now. When he was a kid, Lou Engle came to their church and spoke, and he inspired this kid. You know, and he probably listens to his sermons and watches his videos and maybe went to the call. You know, Drew does a perfect Lou Engle impression. I got Drew to call in, and we was going to just joke with him. I get Drew to call in and say, hey, this is Lou Engle. Hey, you know, and, but then tell him it's a joke, you know. Drew calls in, talks to the kid. Hey, this is Lou Engle. You got a calling on your life, young man. I don't sound nothing like him, but Drew does. You can go back and watch the footage. The kid's face lights up. Lou, oh man, I can't believe you called, Lou. Your work, your ministry has inspired me. Lou, you changed my life. You changed my life, Lou. Oh my God, I can't believe you're on the phone. This is such a blessing, Lou. Bless you, man. Thank you for everything you've done. And then kind of like, we're like, we're too far in it. Like, we're too far into the gag. Like, you can't tell him, hey, bro, it's not Luingo. This is my friend Drew. Oh, you made a fool of me. Whatever the case is, right? So I think Drew just went with it. Even though when doing these characters, we like to kind of go far left and then bring it back home or whatever. So he's like, hey, hold on. I'm in the McDonald's drive-thru. Let me get a number 3. Add ketchup. Yeah, okay, I'm back. And he's like just doing silly stuff. And the kid's still like hook, line, and sinker. Lou Engel's on the phone. Oh my God. And so after that interview or after that phone call, we never told him that wasn't Lou Engle. Is it mean? Yeah, it's kind of mean, but he lived his life moving forward. Like, he just spoke to one of his heroes. Like, how encouraging is that? That one of your heroes, it doesn't make it right. I know. But he's living his life moving forward like he really spoke to Lou Engle, who called and affirmed him. You just got to look at the good. So for him, he's living his life like he did. He didn't talk to Lou Engle. You might not have talked to those fairies. You might not have had that encounter with Jesus. You might not have had that encounter with the angels or the fairies or the aliens. You don't know. It seems real enough to stake my life upon it. I hope it's real. Anyway, your response to that is what matters. How does that change your life? How do you apply the principles that they told you? It doesn't matter if they showed up or not. You got some wisdom that you wasn't privy to beforehand, but now you have it. I'm going to read this last comment, maybe respond, and then we'll call this show. Green and White Jamie says, the dream state is like the 4th, 5th, and 6th dimension also. If we have a lot of bad dreams, then that is to be the case in our afterlife for the individual. You also said that I hear that a spirit will not be able to pass over if the person has unfinished business or was murdered in life. So we'll be stuck here until that they are ready to pass over. You also said that the aim is to end up being a positive mind in a positive mind frame so we can have good dreams and be positive so we are ready to pass on. That's my 2 cents for the convo now. Dumbledore, and I'm going to respond to this because you keep asking me about Mark Passio. I know who Mark Passio is. Weird synchronicity. I was thinking about having him on as a guest, and he added me on Facebook. Like right when I was thinking about having him on as a guest. Sent him a message on Facebook. Didn't respond. I don't know much of his work. I know of him. I know who he is. He's got a big name. He's been doing this for a long time. That's about as far as my extent. I can't, I don't know too much. I know who he is, and I've seen a lot of his work, but I'd never watched a lot of it. So, yeah, the dream state's very interesting, and I will, point you back to an interview we did with a lady named Lainey Dolphin. I'm going to keep talking about this interview. She blew my mind. It was a great interview. I loved every single moment of it, and I wanted to keep her on. I maybe have to get her on again, but she works with dream interpretation and talking about how to interpret your dreams and what they mean and why you keep having these reoccurring dreams and these unresolved issues that you have in your life. For me, it's one thing for us to be tempted and tried in the physical reality, right? You're tried with propositions from women, from propositions from drugs or bad business deals or messing over on people or whatever the case is. And you can easily, fight that stuff and combat it. Get it out my face. I don't want it. Get out of here. But in the dream state, sometimes it's not as easy to say no. Sometimes we just kind of watch it happen. We don't even feel like we're a part of it. But when you're tempted and tried in the dream state and you pass and you're tested in that state, that's where I want to be, where I can have a dream that I could say no and because you still feel like you did it, man. I'm telling you, in the dream state, like my dreams are so real, so lucid. Like I feel the grief, the agony. If I have a bad dream with a woman or something, some woman kisses me or something like that, like I feel bad, like, damn, now I got to tell my wife and my marriage is over. And you feel the grief of what that would feel like. And I try to bring that out. I bring it out in the fact that, look, don't put yourself in a bad situation. You don't want to see what it feels like to be alone or to be dishonest to your wife. You know the grief of that and what it brings. And not just that, but all types of stuff. You know, smoking cigarettes again, your addiction's creeping back on you and it makes you feel dirty and you wake up, oh man, I'm glad I'm not going to smoke crack again. I'm not going to go back to opiate addiction. It's not coming back to in my life. Smoking cigarettes, no, I was delivered of that years ago. I don't want it. Don't come back. I do not want it. So it helps you. That's my 2 cents. With that, I'm going to say peace and shalom. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. This has been a 3-hour podcast. You guys like those podcasts. I do too, because a 3-hour podcast means that I was interested in it. You know, we had something to talk about. It was a common interest. Other than that, we're going to get an hour episode and you'll be done. Move on. Who's next? Who's the next guest? I didn't even really know much about this guy going into it, but we definitely built and I really enjoyed it. So, if you want to support my work and help me produce more podcasts, produce more music, produce more community, more whatever we're doing, if you want to help out what we're doing, head on over to patreon.com/truthseeker. At any level of giving there, you get access to so much stuff. 200 plus songs, Thursday night hangout, School of the Mystics. The Discord links are there in the chat. A bunch of awesome stuff. You know, you get stuff before it's released to the general public, months beforehand. I'm also going to be doing a Monday morning session. And I'm trying to find another night. So maybe I just said it. Maybe that's spirit speaking. We're going to do Monday nights as well. I don't know. But I'm going to start with Monday mornings to start our week off. You know, and I'm probably going to introduce more. I just got to get something that I know that I'll be consistent with. So we're looking at probably Monday mornings. And that's probably going to be something outside of Patreon, but I may use Patreon to kind of facilitate it. But I'm going to do something that's going to be $10 a week if you want to kind of learn one-on-one in that smaller group setting with us, where it's going to be intentional, whether we get into holotropic breathing, we get into prophesying and learning how to do that over our lives. I want to start the week off with that. So honestly, you know, the Thursday night School of the Mystics is a really big group. Some people are in passing, some people are coming, some people are going, and some people are there for 5 minutes or whatever. And we need that though. Like, we need the group hangout like that. So I'm going to keep that the way it is, but these Monday morning things are going to be a little bit more focused to where we can actually get in and tap into the spirit together with just a smaller group of people. So if that's something that you want to do and you want to grow with a smaller community and move forward, working with me as well, that's going to be available too. So just send me an inbox. Just say, hey, I want the info on that. That's going to be like $10 a week, just to kind of, you know, help me pay for some things on the back end and just kind of show that you want to grow in that area as well. So with that, I'm going to say peace and shalom. There's so much free stuff over there. Patreon.com/truthseeker. I just put out 2 meditations that are free to download. I hope that blesses you as well. So I'm going to say peace and shalom, you guys. We'll do it again very soon. Shalom, shalom.
Your way so much higher than mine, so much higher than mine, so much deeper than mine, so much deeper than mine.
Well, that does it for this episode, folks. To hear more episodes of the Truth Seeker podcast, head over to truthseeker.com. And if you're wanting to support the show and get rewards, go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/truthseeker.